clarity. I know that all of you want clarity. You want a life that you can understand. You want to understand yourself, others, even if they're completely irrational, and the world. What if the biggest problem among them all, is a structure that we take for granted? Language. We all love flows. We all want to be responsible. We all want love. We all want freedom. But when we don't have them, the empty space is filled by boxes. Every coping mechanism is a box. Basically, the coping mechanisms are the mother of all boxes. And the biggest one is your phone. Boxes and flows are extremely interesting. They're just like fire and ice. They destroy each other. If you have a flow, boxes cannot form. But if you have a box, the flows cannot start flowing. So it's exactly fire and ice relationship. You have box, you start to have more boxes. You have a flows, you start to have more flows. So it's runaway effect. There's no balance in this system. Why is that? It's because one part of your brain, the left part, deals with boxes, and another part, the right part, deals with flows. Who am I? Well, I want to answer this question because it's not important. The important thing is that today I'm here to help you to see the world through your eyes. So for 2 hours, I'll be you, and if you trust me enough, you'll be me by the end. So you'll also be able to see the world through my eyes. So I'll be everyone, but since I don't know you, I'll also be no one. And my life is anyway just one big contradiction in every sense possible. My age. I have the idealism of a 19-year-old, the energy of a 29-year-old, the wisdom of a 49-year-old, the smartphone skills of a 59-year-old, as all my friends can verify, and the discipline of a 9-year-old, which my company can verify. I was born a male, as you can see, and I had the typical like male beginnings in life, playing around, being very competitive. Everything was about games and sports. Until I realized that there's more to life than that. So in the last 15 years, I have been developing my so-called feminine superpowers. So seeing life in a more fluid way, understanding that people are more important than processes and goals and success, and doing things without knowing why. So the competitiveness in me and these new superpowers were always in this tension, which resulted in where I am today. And how do I approach money? Well, I'm kind of both rich and poor. I'm rich because I have an 8-figure net worth, and I'm poor because I have no money in the bank. In fact, I even have some debt. So everything is a mess in my life. And I try to be like water and adapt to this mess in a very dynamic way, making every day different. My company is one for the ages. It's both brilliant and idiotic. It's idiotic because I run it like an idiot. And it's brilliant because it's, in spite of that, it's somehow developing and growing, and after 12 years, it's now 120 people. It has an 8-figure valuation. I'm still the majority shareholder. And the company is just, for years it was a sales company with no salespeople. Now we have salespeople, but we still don't have marketing. Our product is not a product, it's actually useless. We're just trading assets. We don't make the world better or worse. We don't create value. It's just profitable. It's something we do for money. I can describe what my company does with the following joke. There was a billionaire flying on a plane, and next to him was a blonde. The billionaire was super bored. And he asked the blonde, let's play a game, I'm very bored. The blonde was not into it. The billionaire said, let's play this game. I ask you a question, you ask me a question. Whoever cannot answer the other's question, we'll give each other $5. Blonde was still not into it. Then the billionaire said, okay, let's play the same game, but if you cannot answer my question, I'll give you let's not mess this up. So, if you cannot answer my question, you give me $5. If I cannot answer your question, I give you $500. Blonde was, okay, this one I play. So, billionaire asks the blonde a question, she cannot answer, she gives him $5, and then she asks the question, what is the animal that climbs the mountain on 4 legs, but then comes down the mountain on 3 legs? Billionaire was a bit baffled, thought, couldn't come up with an answer, asked the blonde, can I Google? She said, yeah, sure, feel free. He Googled, no answer in Google, then he asked ChatGPT, nothing helps. And he gave her $500 and said, well, what is the fucking animal? And she said, I don't know, and gave him $5. So that's the closest I can get to the business model of our company that you can get. Basically, we invest into assets that we don't know what they're worth, and some of them sell. We don't know if we call good assets or bad assets. It's just that some of them sell sometimes. It's kind of the opposite of data-driven. And it works. What's with me and people? I have been a mentor and coach since I was 15 because I was playing chess and I was a chess coach. And all of this was largely a fail because my students in chess, they didn't become very strong players, most of them even quit chess. And the people I mentored, they didn't show a lot of progress for many years. But then, after many more years passed, I asked them, and they said that I helped them tremendously. And I was like, but you didn't move in life at all. That, no, you helped me in spite of that. So who knows? Is it a fail? I never studied psychology, but I was kind of into psychology since I was 8, because I started playing chess at 8, including in tournaments, including for money. I earned my first money from chess tournaments while being 8 years old. And chess is, like all individual sports, a very psychological sport. There's a battle on the board, but there's also a mental battle, a battle of confidence. So I developed this feel for psychology, because if you don't have this feel, you cannot handle the ups and downs of a chess game well, and you become your own worst enemy. I was my own worst enemy for a long time in chess, but eventually chess helped me with my own psychology, and then helped me to understand how psychology works in some regards. And romantic love, not quite there. Why? Because I developed a very good capacity to love, but the woman I loved almost never loved me back, and I was continuously friend-zoned through all of my life. I'm like the definition of the friend-zoning process. Of course, not always. I had some great relationships, but the friend-zoning thing is very definitive for me, because it turns out that in spite of all culture, being friend-zoned is the best thing that can happen, especially if you're male, because I will explain now how men work. Men work the following way. You have 70% of your energy, and you can use it for whatever you want. And then you have another 30% of your energy that's only dedicated to mating. You can picture it like this. A man, you can ask him, how much can you run? And he said, 10 kilometers. Then you say, okay, run 10 kilometers. Man runs 10 kilometers and collapses on the ground exhausted. Then you tell the man, well, the most beautiful woman in the world is waiting for you after 5 kilometers, 5 more. Man gets access to the 30% of energy that is only for this, gets up and runs another 5 kilometers. That's how men work. So, when your friend zone is the only moment in a man's life where something happens in biology and you get access to this 30%, and suddenly you feel like you have all the superpowers possible. You can do anything, absolutely anything in this moment, because it's 30% more doesn't sound a lot. But what actually happens is that you have calibrated your daily in and out of energy, and someday you have 67 from 70, someday you are 63, and some you are like 75, and you're exhausted because you're 5% over your limit, but you get 30 more and suddenly you are like, have an excess of energy that you can do anything with it. Creativity, new things in life, learning, education, entrepreneurship, the world is yours. So being friend-zoned is extremely important for success, it turns out. And all of these things has helped me to be more fluid, more adaptive, and more motivated in my life. How does progress happen in my life? It happens due to having zero self-discipline. Discipline is bad. Self-discipline is really detrimental to real large success, and I believe so is the tendency to use willpower. Goals also, I don't think, are helpful because they can only lead you to places where you think you can go, the things you think you can achieve, but the things you don't know you can achieve, you can never set up as a goal. And tracking progress, as we'll see further, is also not a great idea if you aim really high and want to achieve greatness. So, what is the person that really dislikes this? Is the CFO of our company. So, if anyone here is a CFO, an accountant, or really deals with this, they can cover their ears now, because I'll tell something that I will tell something that really will shatter their world. But I was running an 8-figure company, not only without an ERP, but also without Excel. So I had all the numbers in my head, but they were also not numbers. It was just a feel of like more money and less money. So 1 month I was like, things are going good, we'll spend and invest more money. And then the other month was like, things are not going so great, I'll cut a bit on spending. And the thing that that would show me if my judgment was right is, are we able to pay our salaries with no stress? If it was like a little stress, it was fine, because then we are running the exact line of being effective, because money in the bank is useless. Money is like blood, it has to go around. And when we paid our salaries on time, but with like tiny stress, it was perfect. When the stress was high, it was obviously not ideal. And when there was no stress, it's also not ideal. It means that we are getting into a comfort zone. And after 12 years, so about 140 months of doing this, somehow we always paid our salaries on time, which means that it can somehow work if you believe it will work and if you follow good principles about money flows. So, as you can see, I'm quite a unique case here. Genetics, upbringing, professional life started at 8, but personal life had a very slow start. I was moving around in different schools, so I had to become like 14 to have real friends. And then I've discovered the concept of friends, but then I learned out that I was hopelessly behind in discovering the concept of woman. So it was all a very geek journey, messy stuff. But somehow this gave me intuition, and this intuition combined with a lot of luck made sure that I failed upwards. The things that came later in life somehow became more real, more mature, and it was all a journey upwards. Although this was not what my parents thought when I quit university at 21 with no plan for life. They didn't see my journey upwards there, I can tell you that. Also, they also worked both in the university I quit, which let's say I brought shame to the family. So, what really was the growth? Where did I go upwards? It was in one regard, deep understanding. Deep understanding is what really matters in life, because everything somehow comes from understanding. And today's idea is to get my understanding and somehow pass it to you, so you don't have to go through 30 years of failure, because you may not fail upwards, and 30 years is a lot of time. So what is deep understanding? How does Google work? This comparison will really help you understand what is deep understanding. Google has to search in 1/10 of a second in the whole of internet which is more than 500 billion web pages, images, and videos. It's an insane amount of data, more than your brain can imagine. And they somehow do it. And it's very fast. It's not like ChatGPT thinking for 5 seconds. Google is really fast. So how do they do it? First, obviously, they cannot search in the internet in real time, so they take the internet and make a copy on their own servers. But then, how do you search in this copy? The copy is still huge. So what they do is they have an index. An index is something that shows what is where, what piece of data is where, and how the pieces of data are related. And this index is what is helping Google to search so fast in the very large portion of the internet. And now the real question is, how do you create your index? Because Google copies the internet, but you are not much different, because when you were born as a baby, you know very little about the world. You have something embedded in your genes, but you are quite close to being a blank slate. Like, not entirely, but quite close compared to your adult life. So how is your index created? You also copy from the world, but you copy the data. You copy like the web pages, the images, the videos, and a lot of other stuff that your senses can take. But how do you create your index? What are the building blocks of your index? There's a biological part, but it's very outdated because you evolved in the Stone Age. Life was completely different. Then you have a formative part, mostly by your parents when you are young, which is random because your parents can be anyone. And then there's the cultural part. But the cultural part is very biased because culture does not give the same attention to things of the same importance. And culture is just an evolution, a fight of ideas, and culture as an evolutionary process doesn't give a fuck about you. That's the problem, because anything that's evolution is just reality changing over time. And of course, this is a force that is not in any way caring about you. It's to the culture, the cultural evolution, you are completely meaningless, indifferent. So, the cultural part is often ignored because, okay, psychology deals with if you got trauma from your parents. Evolutionary biology deals with how life now is different than when we evolved, like 100,000 years ago in the cave. But culture cannot see its own blind spots. If culture is uninterested in something, it's just not there, because culture is driving the interest. So this is the part which my NGO, I Grow Younger, addresses, because it's the blind spot. And if we, as an organization, try to cover this blind spot, we can try to cover this hole left by culture. And this is not cool for us because we never get viral. We never have the cultural forces behind us, but it's very much needed for the benefit of the world. So, what turned out, your index is flawed because its building blocks are all flawed, and your index has only two things that it really cares about: coherence, so you don't go crazy, and compliance, so you don't get cast out of the tribe. Both are super bad for you. And everything else is not a priority. Objectivity, connection to reality, not a priority at all. Sorry. So, is your identity flawed? So, does this make you broken? Well, no, because there are many other things with you which are probably great. Your dreams, your values, these things are good. So, what is then wrong? What is broken by this flawed process? It's the relations inside your brain. So the driving forces, the effects, the key events, what are the cornerstone things that really define how things in your brain work? This is a mess, the relations. Your wants may be good, but how you get there is the problem. The problem is compounded by this, that you are trying to copy the index. You are a copying machine, you're born into this world, copying stuff, from everywhere, trying to remix it, but there are a lot of copied parts that remain just copied, not really understood, deeply understood by you. So people trying to copy the index from other people is a big problem because the other indexes are flawed and you only see the parts of them that other people want to show you. If you go to Instagram or Facebook, you only see those parts that people want to show you, so you never get the complete picture of anyone's life. It's very hard to get a complete picture of anyone's life, and even if you could, it's not your own, and even if you could, it's still a flawed index because all of our indexes are basically flawed because the building blocks are not the right ones. So, what makes it even worse? The flawed index causes your data to be flawed. So if today Google's server has a hard drive failure and they lose their index, they still have the data. They have copied the data one-to-one from the internet and they still have the data. But your brain doesn't work like it. Every time you get information from the work, and anytime you have input, the input is changed, is refracted the way it gets into your brain because your index has a filter and it changes it so it doesn't clash with your identity or anything else that would make you lose the coherence or the compliance. And this way, because the index is flawed, you also get the data flow, including often your own memories. So then you get into this place where you cannot really know what was real, what is real about the world, sometimes even about you. So this is a big problem, and often in medical training and in other settings where it's very important to be close to reality, the main focus is training the doctor's perception. Very true also about therapists. How do we fix this? How hard is it to build an index? So, first part, tame biology. Your biological instincts do not bring you closer to reality. They bring you closer to survival, and they are meant to be used in a very high danger environment. So you have to tame biology so you get closer to reality. How did I tame biology? Well, a reminder how friend-zoned I was. So check. Then you have to understand psychology. You have to be slow, deep, fluid learner. Psychology is very fluid. There's a lot of quantities, not so much structure. So this requires having tamed biology, so you don't have the urge for structural truth, and being mindful about your own experiences. So since I had so much exposure to psychology in my life due to chess and being a coach and mentor, and now being a leader in the company, I also understand a lot of psychology. I don't have the formal education, but I have the feeling. So check. You need to defy culture by running your own life, experimenting. This is very important so you gather more data for your intuition and you don't fall into these culture traps. I'm a rebel by nature, so check. You need to have high pattern recognition skills, which is a combination of nature and nurture. So if you are familiar with the DISC, D-I-S-C, framework, which is very often used in HR, for example, I am a C. So the pattern recognition is my natural power, and also playing and learning so much chess, which is basically all about patterns, very much expanded my brain's ability to do deep pattern recognition, very slow and very deep. So definitely check. And have a small ego is very important, so you can admit mistakes and improve. So friend zoning also took care of that. And basically, talking about the small ego, who has the best index? Somehow it's me. It's not that it was my life's goal or something, but I'm just a product of my circumstances here. So, this index is coming here by storm into your life. Whether you like it or not, you're already here. So, unless you want to run out the door, it's coming. This talk will challenge everything you believe in for a lot of you. So, it will trigger a lot of defensive mechanisms. So, you may feel like less worthy because of decisions you made in your life. You may feel defensive, you might want to block some of the concepts, some of the information. You may actively disagree with a lot of stuff. That's all fine, that's normal, that's the expected reaction. In psychology, when everything that is even a small part of your identity is challenged, that's the reaction. So it's normal, just let it be, it's fine. So, I'm sure that when you imagine a successful person, financially successful, that's what you imagine. So, but in reality, we're all so far behind in our potential. All of us are at less than 5%. Financially, creatively, every one of us can have billions of dollars and one world-changing idea a day. It's absolutely possible. There's nothing in the way except for doing more and more of the right things. The thing is that we are all very much behind, and so we are all in the same boat. The fact that I have an 8-figure company doesn't mean anything. We are much more the same here, me and you, than we're different. That's very important, because when people meet successful people, they have like this picture in their head that these people must be super smart or always take the right decisions or have amazing work ethic. Like in my math and science school, where I was from 8th to 12th grade, there were real geniuses, and that's why when I learned I'm not one. And I will not talk about my work ethic because... So, the best index. There will be many moments here that I will say will bring like a small storm or a big storm in you, and that's okay, because here we're planting seeds. That's the thing that will start changing a life, hopefully some of yours, in a good way. And I'm not asking you for anything, even to trust me with all of the things that I will tell you. I'm here to give, and if everything is a fail, we still smile. How do you know that it's not some genius A/B tested 1,000 times sales speech? How do you know that this is not a cult? You know, all legit questions. So, first, we're not asking for any money. There is no direction of manipulation in the concept of I Grow Younger, and everything is optimized for your freedom. So it's basically the opposite of a cult. And our content in I Grow Younger is open, it's completely free. In fact, I have spent a huge amount of money, my personal money, so that it is free. And I have no regrets doing this. I feel it's the right thing. So, are you ready to plant some seeds? If the agricultural revolution was up to you, we'd still be chasing deers in the forest, ready to plant some seeds. Okay. So, here we have, this model has never been shown before, like anywhere. Your life is a wardrobe. You open it, all of the stuff in your life is inside. You have all kinds of stuff. So, what's the difference between normal self-help, therapy, mindset coaching in its best versions, and I Grow Younger? So here's the difference. That's your life. In classical self-help, if you have a problem, see this small part here, it has your running shoes, which are in the wardrobe instead of on your feet, and you're running outside. If you have a problem, you want to fix it. What do? You just try to do it somehow. Maybe you take the shoes and lead them to the door. You do something that will help you. You do something on the surface, let's say. And in the end, someday you pick up the shoes, you go out running. Does it work? Sometimes. It's better than nothing. So, what is therapy? Therapy is looking what is keeping your shoes in the drawer. So what are the deep reasons that you don't go out and run? Looking for fears, looking for trauma. Therapy is sometimes effective, sometimes not. The problem with therapy is that it somehow sees people, some modalities more, other modalities less, but in general sees people as a bag of problems. So it's not very optimistic. It can work for some people, it may not work for others. Probably if you choose the right kind of therapy and it's not just talk therapy but something more experiential, it will work, but it's still kind of not the whole picture here because it's focusing on the negative. What is mindset coaching? Okay, you go to a mindset coach. The coach will not deal with your childhood trauma, they will deal with your bright future. So they say, okay, what do you want from life? And you say money, freedom, love, whatever. Coach is looking into your wardrobe is a mess. Coach say, okay, let's empty this, streamline it to your goals, your directions in life, and put it back together in a way that it somehow aligns with your interest. Is this good? Yeah, I mean, I don't see how it can bring any harm unless you just really try to structure it way too much. But it's a way to try to go forward. The problem with each of these three approaches is that this is not the full picture. Because, a reminder, that when you evolved, your wardrobe looked like this. Then it looked like this. Then it looked like this. Then like this. Then like this. Then like this. And the problem is that all of our modern society is designed for a wardrobe that looked like this. Industrial revolution shit. So this was one of the worst times in human history in terms of happiness. Economic and demographic factors pushed people into the cities to look for work. The people were brutally exploited in mines, factories, working 15 hours a day, 7 days a week, children too. It was a very bad time for human flourishing. It was good for humanity because it produced a lot of technology and a lot of progress. It was very bad for the individual human. The problem is that this was the time where the world became very structured, and we have inherited this structure and this desire to exploit the nature and a lot of other things that are bad we inherited from the time of the Industrial Revolution. So basically you can have whatever you want in your wardrobe, but society wants you to have this. And this is a problem. Society wants to turn you into a factory while you are a human. So this is your wardrobe today. It has a lot of different things. It has these devices, unfortunately, it has your phone, but everything here is very structured, very controlled. And we have forgotten that this is not the full picture. Because on the other side of this wardrobe, there's another, the back, that we have forgotten that it exists. And in this wardrobe, the only thing there is 7 blankets. Why blankets? What are the blankets? Well, your brain has the capacity to rewire itself, which science can explore, but from your point of view, it's magic, because it's the structure of life and the structure of you changing with no explanation, no visible reason. It's basically the same as the magician pulling a rabbit out of a hat. From your point of view, it's magic. And the rewiring of the brain is mostly done in the direction of removing some barriers and expanding your capabilities. And because there are 7 families of barriers in your life, we have these 7 blankets to represent the magic. Everything in the front of the wardrobe represents the things in your life that you can define and touch. The 7 blankets represent the magic. Are they?
Sorry.
It's possible with AI. So, what are the blankets? You have the blanket of self-love. The blanket of self-love makes sure that even when you are alone, which is not natural for human because we are social beings, even when we are alone, even when we have nothing to be happy about, we still feel okay. We don't go into downward spirals. We take good care of ourselves. Basically, the self-love blanket is when we feel hugged, even if we are alone. Then we have the unconditional love blanket, which is, it hugs us together with other people, it makes us feel whole with other people. Then we have the meaning blanket, which is about our connection to the world. For example, we may help a homeless person, even though we don't know them. And we can help someone in the other part of the world, which we will never see, which we will never know. And this blanket, even if we try to give it to someone, it always comes back. So this is another magical blanket. Then we have the responsibility blanket. It's about doing stuff. It's related to action. It's like a superhero cape. Then we have the freedom blanket. This is like the magic carpet from Aladdin. It just brings us to anywhere we want to go. And then we have the growth blanket, which is just more of the same. For example, we can have more freedom blankets if we have the growth blanket that can carry other people around. And then we have the deep understanding blanket that always shows us what we need to learn, to know, and to grow. The very interesting thing about the blanket is that although they are kind of separate, they are also connected. So when you try to pull one blanket out of the wardrobe, you always kind of take them over, at least a few. And in the end, all the blankets come on top of you. And that's good because the blankets love you and love each other. So they perfectly complement. So the blankets are extremely important because they carry the most important things in life, the ones that you cannot define. And what is I Grow Younger? I Grow Younger incorporates some self-help stuff, some therapy stuff, and some mindset coaching stuff, but also it deals with the blankets. So dealing with the blankets is super tricky because the blankets are there, like you cannot destroy them, you cannot create them, they're just there. So it's very hard to do any kind of operations with them. So what can you do with the blankets? You can do three main things, which I Grow Younger tries to do. First, take the back doors of this wardrobe and you rip them off. There's no reason to have your blankets behind the door. This will be super stupid. Keep the most important, most magical, most beautiful part of your life behind the door. Just rip the door and make it go away. Number one. Yeah, without a door. They're always available. So, number two. A very dangerous thing is that you may forget that the blankets exist. Just get consumed by all of the items in the front and you forget that the blankets exist. You get sworn in work, in processes, in bad times, in arguments, in toxic relationships. There are so many different ways to lose sight of the blankets. Structure, basically, if you get swallowed by structure somehow, then you can lose sight of the blankets. Basically, if you get here, and this can get bigger and deeper on only things and work and processes and focus, and you may forget that the blankets exist. This is why I Grow Younger installs these mirrors, so you can always see that the blankets are there. If you always see that the blankets are there, you never forget they exist, and you don't lose touch with the important things in life. And the third part is that when you get stuck here, and then here in your phone, then you need a panic button. The panic button is a button where when you get deep in the front part of the wardrobe and you don't have the energy to basically get out of there, you push the panic button and it ejects you at the front. And then, because of the mirrors, you remember that the blankets are there and you can rebalance. And in the presentation later, we see what we do for each of these things. You have to be careful because religions and ideologies may want to give you a fake Trojan horse blanket that is like your blanket, but it's foreign and it serves someone else's agenda. So you should be careful, but this is basically the only risk of the blanket, is not to take fake blankets from outside. Yours are everything you need. And there is one more very important thing. Your brain has two types of cells, which I will explain to you, and in super expert terms, there are neurons and non-neurons. So the neurons are the cells that give signals and that fire, and the non-neurons are cells that help the neurons do their work and support them. The most important non-neuron type of cell is called astrocytes, astro because they look like a star, and they basically wrap around the neurons, and they have a few functions. They feed the neurons, they take away waste products from the neurons' activity, but even though the astrocytes are not neurons, they cannot think. They encode the state of the brain. Basically, it's your environment, like hormonal levels and glucose levels and many other stuff, then the astrocytes as a buffer, and then the neurons. So, whenever something happens in your environment and you get into these loops of like emotions, thoughts, experiences, actions, everything in a circle, the astrocytes are a very important role in this circle because they are a stabilizer. You know, the neurons fire and the firing goes very fast, while on the other hand, rewiring the neurons is very slow. So the neurons either work at amazingly fast speed or at like slavishly slow speed. There needs to be some baseline in between. So the astrocytes have a slow baseline kind of function where they take data from the blood, the environment, and the neurons, because they see when the neurons fire. They don't know like exactly what they fire and what they calculate and what they estimate, but they see when they fire, and one astrocyte can connect to up to 2 million neurons and can see the overall activity of a part in the brain. So the astrocytes basically accumulate a lot of data and encode a state of the brain, and they can also communicate within each other and have these slow waves, which are calcium ions are used for this, where the astrocytes basically say to the neurons if we are safe and what are the conditions around. And whenever the neurons want to rewire or to strengthen pathways, for example, to create memory, the astrocytes are the one giving the green light. So no brain rewiring can happen without the astrocyte layer. Why am I talking about all of this? Because the astrocytes have a very specific things they look for in the environment. And danger for the astrocytes is not the same as danger for your neurons, not the same as danger for the thinking part of the brain. For example, it's like very primitive, but very important because it encodes the state of your brain at any given moment. For example, if you're one of those people who likes to count their steps, measuring success for you, counting your steps, is not in any way related to danger. So for your psychology, it's okay. You're doing your steps and everything's fine. But the astrocytes are very biological. So we're talking about pure biology here. And when we evolved, the only times we had to measure success was when something was important. And when was it important? When it was dangerous. So basically, when you measure success, you're creating biological stress in your organism because of the astrocytes. And if you very much spend time in the front part of the wardrobe, and you do all these modern things like measuring success a lot and trying to improve incrementally, what's happening is that the astrocytes get stuck in this loop where first you get this like small danger signals in the astrocytes, but then it goes on, and you never get a moment when you don't measure success. All of these grinding people that wake up 5 a.m. every morning, can do everything by the clock. This is super stressful for the astrocytes. It's not normal. It's not normal in nature for this to happen. So in the end, you get quite stressed on a purely biological level. So not only you are in the front and far away from the blankets, but you get all of these danger signals that prevent your brain from rewiring. And if it's one thing that we optimize for I Grow Younger, it's positive change that is permanent. So good rewiring of the brain. On the other hand, if you're with the blankets, it's totally different, because the blankets, you don't have measuring of success. And when you don't have measuring of success, but you do get some novelty, you do get some interaction, you do get connection with people, you do get growth. The astrocytes have the optimal state, which is uncertainty, yet safety. This is what you should be aiming for. Not complete comfort zone and safety, uncertainty, yet safety is your optimal state. And this generates a very good astrocyte state, and they allow the neurons to rewire. Rewiring neurons means rejecting and casting away your limiting beliefs and even healing trauma. So extremely important to get this green light. So how does positive change happen in people's lives? After the wardrobe, let's try to get a bit more abstract. You now have the feel of how it works, but now we get concrete and we see what we can actually do in life. Well, I have a model, it's highly scientific. Your life is like a bag. Every problem you have inside is like a lock. And every life event, thought, emotion, everything is like a key. Since this bag is your subconsciousness, you cannot look inside. Drop keys, and there's a lot of things going on, and very rarely a key enters into a lock. When it enters, some brain rewiring happens, and you have progress. It happens like once in a million. So what can you do? You can put in more keys. Your therapist is a key expert. He's trying to put the best keys, but even he or she is like 1 in 1,000. Has success 1 in 1,000. The therapist can talk for 1 year in a person, and after 1 year you have this phrase that suddenly the client is and he gets it, and then change happens. But there's a lot of keys. So what can you do better? Well, better keys obviously, but also more keys. So living a more dynamic life, more shaking the bag definitely helps. And let's see where this more comes from. Nothing in life happens without driving forces. Sorry to be Captain Obvious, but that's kind of true. You need some push or pull for anything to happen. And let's simplify it to the families of these forces. Love is the giving force when you're opening up, and fear is when you get blocked in. And the universe also contributes with its two families. Chaos is the force that changes stuff, and structure is the force that preserves and keeps it the same. For example, biology is a very beautiful dance of chaos and structure. Chaos is everything that's going, but DNA is the structure that keeps the good patterns and tries to make them better. So let's put them here on this compass: human forces, universal forces. And we have combinations. We have fear and chaos, or we can have fear and structure, or love and structure. We have these 4 combinations. And fear and chaos is that instincts and delusions don't have control of our life, not a nice place to be. Fear and structure, you're trying to get some control, but you're still driven by fear, so you're closed in. It's not cool. And then love and chaos is where creativity and a lot of good things happens. This is basically where the blankets are. And love and structure is where science and seeking the truth is. So, what happens when people try to improve their lives? Let's label them. Okay, now they're labeled. And people think it works like this. You go from worse to mediocre, and then you think that you will go from mediocre to good. Because this is how somehow we think. However, this cannot work. In fact, it can never work in this way. Why? Because when you see the labels, you see that to get from fear to love, you have in this moment structure, but structure is not something that will make big change in your life, switching from fear to love. Structure is a preserving force, so it cannot facilitate this change. So this cannot happen. So what happens instead? This. Basically, people just go around in the button, they feel bad, then they buy Jordan Peterson's book, he tells you that you have to tidy up your room or something, so get structure, basically. He calls it order, a word I hate even more. So you get to mediocre, get some of your life under control, but this is what is called in mathematics a local maximum. It's not the global maximum you want, it's a local maximum where you get locked and you have no progress. How does progress happen? On the other side, from worse to great. Doesn't make any sense, but this is how it works. Why? Because on the other hand, you have chaos, and chaos is a driving force, a real driving force that can change from fear to love. And we'll examine why this works in more detail. And you kind of realize that there's a problem with stuff like fake news, people being totally ignorant. Well, no one gets into this fourth place up there. That's why. Because in order to get to love and structure, so love the truth and have the structure of understanding to get it, you cannot go one way. You can only go the other way, and it's the last place you will end. So, not a lot of people who end there. This is why critical thinking suffers and all of this. What is your identity? It's simply you going around in those circles. That's it. Everything in your life, like your life as a whole, but also the smaller parts of your life, have these paths around. And the sum of these paths define what makes the current you. But the future you is not entirely defined. You can do some tricks to influence it. What can we do? Life is a dance of doing and understanding. So, what is more important, doing or understanding? Where do we fail? These are the building blocks of progress, so let's examine this in detail. If we have doing without understanding, well, we are an idiot basically, but we get somewhere. Maybe we get to bad places, but every experience, even bad one, is important. So wrong direction, approach and speed, but this is how we learn to get the right direction, approach and speed. And eventually we get understanding, so this is not the problematic part. Every young entrepreneur is with the doing without understanding part. Understanding without doing does not exist, because if you have understanding, you will know that you should be doing something. So, where's the problem? Why do people get stuck? The problem is that you cannot have fake doing with real understanding, because doing is doing, it cannot be fake. But you can have real doing with fake understanding. And that's how people get stuck. You do stuff, and then the index, remember the index is flawed, it's interpreting the experience of this doing in a flawed way, and you get the real doing, but then the fake understanding inside. And there's no force, no driving force that is natural to get you out of this. So this is very important point where we focus our efforts. How to have real understanding. If you have real understanding, you get out of this and your life is immediately much better. So, what is the problem with the understanding? The problem with the understanding is that we have a problem with estimating life's complexity and the complexity of living it. These are two completely different things. In the Stone Age, life was extremely simple, but this was extremely complex to live. You would have to know where the herds of the bison are and how to hunt them, then how to prepare the animal, and then how to conserve the meat, and also if there are other hostile tribes that will fight for the same territory or the same animals, and also what mushrooms not to eat and what fruits not to eat, and how to manage all of the relations in the tribe, because if you get cast out of the tribe out with a saber-toothed tiger, it's very bad for you, the chances that your genes propagate. So basically life was simple, but very complex to live. It was not only high danger, but the complexity was very high. Why? Because the tribe was on its own. There was nowhere to outsource. Modern life is the opposite. Life is extremely complex, but extremely easy to live because we have outsourcing. You don't go hunting in the forest, you go to the store and you buy food. So somehow it's the other way around. And life with outsourcing is not completely different than life without outsourcing. If you have life without outsourcing, you have to spend time in the front wardrobe. You have to hunt, so that's where your bow and arrow are, and you have to find food and clothes and all of this. So this is why your brain cares so much about things, because things were needed to survive. But in the modern age, you only need money to buy anything, and you need the blankets. That's all you need in modern life, like money and the blankets, if you include also health in the blankets, but the blankets are very good for health, both mental and physical. So that's all you need. And money is not a thing, it's also a flow. And the blankets also cannot be defined, so you can say that they are flows. So it turns out that we're prepared for one thing, but then it's completely the other. However, here culture comes and ruins everything. Because culture, is all about the fight of ideas, religions, ideologies, and although every ideology and religion is different, they all have one thing in common. They all say that life is complex to live. Because if life was easy to live, then you don't need someone to tell you how to do it, right? You don't need the culture, you don't need the religion, you don't need the ideology. So every ideology will tell you that life is complex to live, which is a lie, because it's no longer true. It was true for a very long part of humanity, up to very recently. This is why this part of culture and religion endured, and it kind of helped people a lot. But now it's different. The truth of today is that a self-aware, loving, intuitive, creative person needs zero systems. You no longer need this culture. So, how do we improve stuff? Well, not via culture, obviously, because it brings us back in this regard. So you need a system that kind of has a different relationship with you. A system that is not in the evolutionary fight and trying to get more territory and more resources and more people and more believers. You need a system that wants none of these, the opposite, a system that wants to give people freedom. That's why I told you that I Grow Younger is the opposite of the cult, because it tries to give you the opposite stuff. It tries to give you freedom. While the cult tries to take freedom away from you, I Grow Younger tries to give you freedom, even more freedom than you thought you wanted and needed. Because free people are also great for the world. So a system that tells you all systems are overrated is kind of an evolutionary suicide, but this is what the world needs, and this is why we created I Grow Younger. A system to end systems, basically. You only need the compass and a supporting system that explains everything with a compass, with a wardrobe, with simple models that everyone can understand, that are not like canonical and not closing, but are liberating. And their ideologies and their ideas. That's an extremely important distinction. For example, communism is an ideology. Why? Because if everyone stops believing that communist is good, if there's no communist left in the world, communist is gone. Communism is gone. It's made of the people who believe in this. Good or bad, it's made of those people. While ideals are different. Truth will exist even if no one believes in it. Fairness, justice will exist even if no one is fair. And the most important thing that we have forgot, clarity will exist even if everyone is confused. So that's our goal today, clarity. We want to get back to clarity. Being confused is bad for everyone. The great lie of ideologies, how do they perpetrate this lie that life is complex to live? They say that, this also starts with Aristotle, who had a very close saying, and a lot of Western culture is based on Aristotle. You have to find the right amount of any given thing, and you try to have that amount in your life. The golden mean. The golden mean results in culture that looks and sounds like this. Sorry for the foreigners, this is in Bulgarian, but it's not good to be translated because it's art. This is a very famous Bulgarian song in which Irina Forin, a famous Bulgarian singer, sings about the perfect woman, about how she knows exactly what is the golden mean for anything. So, when is the time for love, when is the time for war, how much makeup to wear, how things should dress be, when to laugh and when to stop, how to wear her hair, and all of these harmony. And this song brings a strong emotion. Why? Because it has inside beauty, harmony, and this feeling that we have exactly the right thing, this soothing feeling. So culture, via everything it does, including a lot of the art, is just pushing this narrative that a central part of life is having the perfect amount of anything. But if you think about it rationally, this model is a disaster. How do you know the right amount? How do you know how to get to the right amount? How do you know how to keep it in the fluctuations of life? And how do you know that this right amount and this right amount turned out to be a very bad combination? So, this is a disaster. This is how this looks in real life. Whoever tries to live by this model, this is the end result in your life. So, is there an alternative? Well, how would the alternative theoretically look like? Find everything that's so good in your life that you cannot overdo it. Then you maximize it with total joy and fun, and you let go of your desire to control everything else. So basically, only care about the blankets. So, is it possible? Do the relations of reality support this? Yeah, they do. But the reason that this is not mainstream is that they do today in Western countries, in democracies where there are no human rights. Before, it was a problem. The king wouldn't like it, the authoritarian leader wouldn't like it, systems would reject it because it would weaken them, and also it would not hold for women, for minorities. There will be so many problems for someone to really be themselves, because this is what the blankets are. They are you. But today, in this country, there's no reason why not to live in this way. It's just a huge, the king is naked moment, because it's obvious, but people somehow don't admit it. It's not something that we talk about. And this is how it looks when you maximize the things that you cannot overdo. Much better life. So, what's between you and this? Well, culture. Structure and culture. And the intertwining blocks that they create. This is perpetrated and turned into a silent tradition. But what is tradition? Peer pressure exerted by dead people. That's what tradition is. So you can explore tradition, you can have joy in exploring a tradition. You don't have to respect the tradition always and in all cases. You are free to do whatever you want. So what are the traps that we get trapped in terms of tradition and culture? First one, super unobvious, beauty. So beauty is great. However, beauty triggers some biological buttons in us, and just like in the song of Irina Forin that you saw how beautiful it was, but it was promoting the wrong model, basically, to live, beauty comes with two big traps. One is symmetry, the idea that you have to have this means and you cannot have extremes, the idea that you have somehow to be in the middle and have balance. This is total fallacy. Life is chaos. Your brain is chaotic mesh of neurons. life is extremely chaotic and random. So the idea that you should have symmetry and balance is like, it doesn't make any sense. Basically, your index is between your brain and the world, and if one is chaotic and other is chaotic, how can you try to have something tidy in the middle? It will not work. And the other, even bigger trap is purity. So purity is the most freedom-destroying thing. If you want something to be pure, so all of the perfectionists in the audience, if you want it to be pure, like, why? Why? You're doing it as a coping mechanism. The world does not like or reward purity. Purity, however, comes with beauty, because when you see the stream, the river that is crystal clear and pure, like, purity is just integrated into beauty. That's why it's so hard to ditch it. But you can, and in many situations, you should. Cultural trap 2 is using logic to think alone. So logic is made to communicate. It runs with language, so it cannot be better than the language we use to describe it. It's a formal thing, basically. And it's made to communicate. When we communicate, it's good. Logic, argumentation, debate. If you're using logic alone, you are using something that was not made for this situation. This skill is not made to be used alone. Of course, with all of our training, with all of our education, you can get somewhere with logic, but this is only a local maximum. So logic is a very weak tool, and it's only been evolutionary conceived in order to be used in groups with communication. So that we can correct each other's logical fallacies. If you write logical fallacies in Google, you'll find with Wikipedia a list of 57 or something ways that your logic goes wrong. And most of them are valid for most people. So logic is overused and overvalued. Measuring success. So measuring success is a trap. And it's a very insidious trap because it has obvious benefits, like you get incremental progress, but the costs are hidden. So you get trapped. You think it's good. In fact, it's bad. Why it's bad? Well, astrocytes, balance of the two hemispheres in the brain, like they're basically neuroscientific reasons why measuring success is bad. And measuring success is something that is done in factories, not in humans. When you measure success, you become closer to being a factory, which you don't want. What's the better idea? Intuition. Sensing and having skills beyond the visible. The invisible is more powerful. Why? Well, being visible has a biological cost. In order for logic to know, for you to know where it comes from, there is a cost of having these locks in the brain. Just like there's a cost having locks in the computer. It requires space on the hard drive. In order to have locks in the brain, it's costly. That's why it's only used for specific tasks. If you use intuition, there are no locks. And intuition is much more powerful because it's freed of this constraint that you need to show how it works. It only gives you the solutions, not the path. But you need the solutions after all. So intuition works beautifully in every environment, even messy, asymmetric environments which are not good to logic. And it's super important to know that there are two separate families of intuition which intertwine. You have intuitions for structures. This is how things relate, cause and effect, stuff like this. And you have intuition for quantities. Intuition for quantities sounds very abstract, but this is a huge family of skills. For example, when you go to the shop and you get a bag of oranges and you say, okay, it's 2 kilos, that's intuition about quantities. So the intuition about quantities is everywhere in life. All of human relationships are intuition about quantities, if they have any transactional elements. So everything apart from unconditional love is intuition about quantities. How much will I give you? How much do I want to take? How much can I annoy you before you really become very annoyed? So how much am I willing to sacrifice before this is not worth it? So everything is intuition about quantities. And structure is structure, but quantities are everywhere. See, this is a very structural thing, a map of metropolitan Sofia. If you want to build this dough, you have a ton of quantities. You have how many trains, how many people, how often will the trains be. Everything becomes a quantity suddenly in the structure. So the quantities are everywhere. You cannot design a system without quantities, even if on the surface it seems like structure. Quantities are everywhere. And a very important thing, everything about your blankets is quantities. They don't have structure. Responsibility, love, unconditional love, growth, these things don't have structure. So if you lack intuition about quantities, you will not be able to see how and feel how you grow and compare your growth to the potential growth of future you in different scenarios after different decisions. So I have a very favorite person. He's called Alexander Grothendieck, called the best mathematician of the 20th century. He was different. Even among mathematicians, he was different. He had one of the strongest intuitions in history. And when forced to work with an inadequate structure, he would just build his own. This is maths, you know, you're standing, as Isaac Newton said, on the shoulder of giants, which means that you are built upon thousands of people who are all total geniuses. And still Grothendieck would say, nah, I'll start from scratch and do better. So we're talking about an insanely intuitive person who would feel structures in just deeper and deeper than others. And he made very big advancement in mathematics. He and his students revolutionized algebraic geometry and many other fields in mathematics. So when we apply Grothendieck's approach to life, what happens? Well, you see the existing structures, they suck because they are built by imperfect people, governed by imperfect systems. Nothing is as they seem to be. Basically, people are better than structures in this world. Structures are pretty broken. And here we come to the culture trap 4. And what if the biggest problem among them all is a structure that we take for granted? Language. What if our lack of understanding for the world is because we try to put everything in language? Language is just slow to evolve, and it's just outdated. We still use a lot of the same language we used like 100, 200 years ago, but life is extremely different now. 200 years ago, we were still fighting for survival. Today, we fight for love, meaning, and happiness. Survival is more or less a given, but we still use the same language. We still trust it, and it's becoming part of a problem. Language is rigid. It's hard and slow to change, and it's also just poorly made. Language is not the best achievement of humanity in terms of modernity. In terms of the ancient times, well, like language was something new. It was something amazing. Oh, we can communicate and coordinate. We can chase the bear together in ancient times, in the Stone Age. But today, language is pulling us back. Why? Because it's too slow to evolve. There are missing words which relate to stuff that would be important, stuff like the blankets. There are a lot of missing words there. Word meaning is not universal. For example, intuition means different things to different people, and it's one of the most important things in life. It shouldn't be this way. Confusion in language is amplified by relations, because a language has a graph structure, and everything is defined by something else in the graph. So there's no like axioms like in math, like you start by axioms and then you define properly and you build theorems and everything has this proper, clear definition. Language is not like this. Language is just vectors, stuff pointing to other stuff. So this means that confusion is amplified by this structure. It's poor at describing quantities, which we just found was important. It's poor with changes over time, which is one of the most important quantities, and we'll see how important it is for change. And there are trap words. So trap words are an extremely interesting phenomenon. This is one of the innovations of I Grow Younger. We still haven't proven it. We're on the planning a scientific study to prove it, but I'll tell you what it is and you will agree that it's obvious. So what is a trap word? A trap word is some very commonly used word that has a very complex meaning behind. Stuff like work, business, relationship, religion, these are trap words. What does it mean if it's trap? We all know what work is, so it's not like the things that have different meaning to different people, like intuition. The problem is that when the language center and the brain evolved, like tens of thousands of years ago, life was simple and such complex concepts like work did not exist. Work is an interchange of very different types of flows between the employee and the employer. There's money, time, trust, appreciation, education, experience, growth, so many different intertwined flows of value. This is too much for the language center of the brain to handle. Basically, there are so many vectors, so many points pointing out of the word work that a lot of neurons fire. And as you know, one of the two main goals for the brain is not to go crazy. So the brain has a system of shutting down runaway neural activity. So if a lot of neurons start to fire, the process is shut down. The astrocytes are involved in this using potassium ions, I think. And basically the electrical activity is stopped when too many neurons fire. So what happens when you hear or say the word work? Whenever it enters your brain, a lot of neurons fire, the process is shut down to prevent danger to the brain, overall danger basically, and there are only very shallow loops remaining, which remain only on, let's say, autopilot level. So if I go and ask, hey, Nikki, how is your work? And he'll just say, fine. That's it. So shallow, autopilot response, no depth. And this will happen every single time. So if you want to explain to yourself why people can have 7 different jobs for 20 years and still be totally inadequate about work, cannot negotiate a salary, cannot negotiate better working conditions, cannot change a job after feeling bad at it for a whole year. That's the reason. No intuition, zero intuition about this whole family of topics will be created unless you somehow segment it and start to think inside your brain, in your intuition, your index, until you start thinking of work as a family of stuff. So not a single thing. The problem is that when it's a single word, it's not intuitive to do that. And it will probably, the stimulus will come from outside. So now when I say it to you, you think it's obvious, but if no one tells you this, you will keep being trapped in the trap word. So trap words are a big problem. We'll define what is a trap word in a minute, so you know which words are all trap words. Basically, language is just badly matching the structure of life. That's true. Life is structures, quantities, cycles, spirals, networks, a lot of stuff. Language is basically only good at describing one type of structure, where we have these objects. So it's not the best. And if you follow the flawed structure of language when exploring life, what do you get? The fake understanding that we talked about. So what's the way forward? This is the slogan of I Grow Younger. Intuition beyond language. So we somehow try to get beyond this. And here, this is the most important concept that you can have beyond language. We divide everything in the world into things that you can define and things that you cannot define. If you can put a box around it, it's a box. If you can't, it's a flow. So what are flows? Are blankets. What are boxes? All of the things in the front part of the wardrobe. Boxes and flows are extremely interesting. They're just like fire and ice. They destroy each other. If you have a flow, boxes cannot form. But if you have a box, the flows cannot start flowing. So it's exactly fire and ice relationship. You have box, you start to have more boxes. You have a flows, you start to have more flows. So it's runaway effect. There's no balance in this system. Why is that? It's because one part of your brain, the left part, deals with boxes, and another part, the right part, deals with flows. Your brain is divided in two exactly because boxes and flows have such a different structure inherent structure that one set of wired neurons is very good at handling boxes, like processes, like labeling, and like language. And the other part is very good at doing flows. What are flows? Where am I in the big picture? So holistic stuff. And a lot of the most important things in life are flows. And here we arrive to the conclusion that goals are bad. I promise to tell you why goals are bad. Goals are boxes. Even if you achieve the goal, you do negative work inside because you get into the box mode. Love, meaning, intuition, creativity are all flows. So, the sad reality of the modern life is that we all love flows. We all want to be responsible. We all want love. We all want freedom. But when we don't have them, the empty space is filled by boxes. Every coping mechanism is a box. Basically, the coping mechanisms are the mother of all boxes. And the biggest one is your phone, because it's always there and it's a very addictive box. Why? It has other boxes inside, so it's like an endless going down into the abyss of more and more boxes. So, how do we do this? One instinct for life. That's all you need. The instinct is trying to get rid of the boxes, and when you get rid of the box in your open empty space, don't replace it with more boxes. Don't replace one addiction with another addiction, for example. Don't replace one bad job with another bad job. Don't replace one toxic relationship with another toxic relationship. You try to replace them with flows. Or if you cannot generate the flows, don't worry. No one can. Flows cannot be created. The blankets are already there in the back. You cannot create them. You cannot destroy them. You only need to give them space. How do you give them space? Get rid of the boxes. And the left and the right brain is what caused this. They are evolutionary origins. Boxes are meant to catch food while we still evolved as animals. So focus, box around the food, catch, eat. Where did flows come from? Like intuition. The right part of the brain was tasked with a very important goal of not being eaten. So, what does this mean? Our place in the world, potential danger, integrating risks, intuition about quantities, also intuition about structure in a more holistic sense. The right brain deals with the whole, the left brain deals with the parts. The right brain understands the world, the left brain manipulates the world. This is why the left brain, in most people, governs the right hand, the manipulating hand. So, it will be an oversimplification to say biologically that logic is in the left part of the brain and intuition in the right, but in our flawed human condition in modernity, it's pretty much right. What we do mostly is our left brain dominates the picture. It wants to achieve goals, it wants to progress, it wants to do stuff. The right brain is helpful, it provides context. Context is a very typical right brain thing, so seeing the big picture. It provides context, it helps, but what it does not do is go into the depth. So whenever you are left brain dominated, right brain helps a bit, but you don't get the depth and you don't get the blankets. All of the blankets come from the right brain, and the left brain destroys them. Your left prefrontal lobe has control loops, mechanisms that recheck stuff and measure success, and those destroy the blankets. So, in the modern world, what do you need? Much more flows. You need the blankets. And one rule to rule them all. Everything worth maximizing is a flow. The box cannot be maximized because it is fixed. So you want to maximize flows. Everything in the way of it is a box. So you only need one rule for your life. It's a rule beyond language, because some words are in the mix of the box and the flows, the boxes and the flows, and you know which ones? The trap words. That's why you fail there, because the trap words, all of them have a mix of the flows and the boxes, and this is why proper intuition cannot be created. And this one rule basically fixes your entire life. It's like magic. Why is it magic? Because it comes from the magical part of your brain, the blankets. And if you haven't figured out by now, the front part of the wardrobe was your left part of the brain, and the back part with the blankets was the right part of the brain. And it's the reason we put it the back is that because this is how society sees it, but basically should be the front, because it's more important for the modern person. Flows help you in a magical way, but you cannot create them. So what can you do? Chaos. I will give you the super funny story about how I discovered why chaos is so invaluable in life. Me and my friends were getting home from a wedding, and one of my friends told a story. He said, my friend went to a new Bulgarian university to try to enter the university. Exam is 100 questions from 8th to 12th grade, every possible subject in school. You cannot learn this for a month or for 3 months, and this person was barely set foot in school, so he was a very bad student. But he decided to give it a shot. He went there, he looked at the questions, he very well estimated his own lack of ability, and he decided to put D on all of the answers. They're like A, B, C, D, E, and he put D, 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 D 100 times. He did that. He actually did that. And then he gave the test, and it turned out the D's were a little more than the average of 20%. They were like 20-something%. And it turned out that he not only didn't have the least score, but he was also accepted into university. So this is Bulgarian university. You can get accepted with this column of D's. Like, we were laughed so hard on this poor uneducated boy. But then I revisited this story from time to time, and I was like, isn't there some wisdom in this? Because the guy got into university, and to this day he doesn't know which D's were correct. I was like, can you learn something from this guy? And it turns out that you can, because what did the guy do? He enforced chaos onto reality. That's what he did. This is super hard to do. Imagine that every time you have to make some decision, for example, whether to start going to sport or to dance or to go more hiking in nature. When you have to make a decision for your life, whether to improve your life or not, imagine that every time you flip a coin, would you improve 50%? No. Why? Because you're very bad at imposing chaos onto reality. But this guy, he did it. And I was like, there's something here. Now, everyone in the audience, can you look to the person to your right? Now, can you look to the person on your left? 2 out of these 2 people are bad at change. I can assure you. 2 out of these 2 people are bad at change. Every single person is bad at change. This is the worst skill of humans. It's like an anti-skill. Basically, if you want to change, you will not have 1 out of 2. You will not have 1 out of 100. You will have 1 out of 10 in a million that will succeed, because every second is the chance to change, and it will not work. And it will not work, and it will not work. But if you manage to impose chaos onto reality, to make sure you listen to the coin you flip, then it can work. And what is this in practice? It's chaos, because chaos forces you to do random stuff. And if your life is chaos, then you will be able to change for the better. So this is why chaos and progress and flows and the blankets are inherently connected. So chaos is not part of the blankets, but it's kind of a supporting system. in your life. So you will dislike chaos, but nothing will help you as much as chaos. So no boxes unless needed for a process. Of course, in our work and in our life, we have boxes all the time, but if it's needed for a process, you take it and then you leave it, it's fine. Otherwise, just give flows the power, the blankets. And there is one model that absolutely kills this system, that cheats your way into certain progress, because you remember that you cannot create the flows. But what can you do? You can go to a box with no boxes in, and in this empty space, only flows can come in, so you can cheat the system. Basically, whenever you are left brain dominated, and you like planning stuff, and you are stuck in the structure, you plan to go to a place which has no boxes. You plan to go to the sports, dance, evening with friends, you go in nature, and this works. This is basically how people rebalance and cope in modernity. But, as you know, I Grow Younger is all about doing good things to the extreme. We take this one to the extreme. How we can do it better? We can do it better if we have two more things. One, you have to invent the process. Sports, dances, you didn't invent. So you're copying something from outside, still good, not the same as if you invented tennis. If you invented tennis, you will play tennis with more joy than any other person in the world because you invented it. But you can invent stuff. And the other thing that really helps is perceived danger. I would say, what is perceived danger? So perceived danger is something that seems unsafe, but it's actually safe. For example, if I tell you to go to the Vitusha mountain and get lost in a forest, is this safe? Well, yeah, there's no one there, no people, no animals, but it sounds super scary to you. It's actually safer than walking into South Park or Borisova Gradina or whatever, because here it's more danger that something might happen. In the forest, there's no one, but there's perceived danger. Perceived danger means that you will first release a bit of adrenaline, but not so much as for actual stress, but just adrenaline for focus, for solutions. And this will tell the brain this experience is important. Then you will find your way using right brain stuff because there's no boxes in the forest. And then when you find the path, what happens? After 2 or 3 hours lost in the forest, you find the path, which means that your expectations get outmatched by reality. You expect to find the path at some point, but suddenly it's in front of you. And this tricks your biology more than any other thing. So you get the right brain stuff, the flows. You convert all of your astrocytes to help you because you're not measuring success in the forest. You can't. There's no measuring scale. And then you get the win because you find the path and you find it suddenly. So you have sudden success, outmatching of expectations. So we have more than safety. We have super safety. Not expectations fulfilled, better than expectations. It's very hard to do. And then you have this small adrenaline spike that says all of this is extremely important because we released adrenaline, do more of the same. What is more of the same? Well, having flows and winning, basically. So you trick your biology. This is a trick, and it's a master trick. You basically hack this whole system. All of the problems, they will disappear until the first sleep. You will be able to do changes in your life. You will do everything that you have barriers against much easier. And this is the time to seize the moment, do something great. So flows complement each other perfectly. You remember this picture with the blankets that were on top of the guy? Flows basically never stood in each other's way. Every flow helps every other flow. This turns out to be a big shape, but that's how it is. And you with flows basically just are immensely powerful compared to you with boxes. It's incomparable. You're more powerful in the visible and you're immensely more powerful in the invisible. But are flows effective? Like, what about progress? What about day-to-day progress? basically just fuck this. Your life has a lot of days. You don't need to improve today. You need to plant the seeds to improve forever. So, effectivity will help you achieve the possible. Creativity will help you achieve the impossible. The impossible is what you want because you have limiting beliefs, and if you manage to achieve the impossible from your point of view, basically, whatever, I can have limiting beliefs. If I manage to achieve stuff in spite of them, first they will quickly dissipate because they will be disassociated, but secondly, they are not in my way anymore. So again, I manage to cheat the system, to cheat biology. You know, biology is a very difficult enemy to have. It's always in you, it's always holding you back. It has only one weak point. It's extremely predictable. You can get it into these constructions and you can make it your ally for a while. And while it's your ally, it's the time to win. And if you understand life, if you have the understanding, then basically you turn the understanding into winning by going into these constructions where biology stops being your enemy and your weight and holding you back and starts being your ally. And the difference between someone pulling you back and someone pushing you is just immense in terms of success, achievements, and change. And what are the flows that you can maximize? There are the 7 blankets. Self-love means be one with yourself. Destroy the boxes inside. Destroy the barriers inside. Unconditional love and compassion destroys the barriers to others. Meaning destroys the barriers to seeing the world as one. Responsibility destroys the barriers between you and the actions you want to take. Freedom allows all of the above. And scale or growth maxes all of the above. If you have these, you don't have to care about anything else in modern life except for basic safety. If you have this, you will have money. If you have this, you will have happiness. Remember, I didn't use the word happiness anywhere. This is because it's kind of a trap word. It's an after effect, not a driving force. These are the driving forces because they destroy the barriers in your way. And where's the intuition that will allow this deep understanding? It's everywhere. You don't have to care about this. It happens right now. It happens while you sleep. It happens all the time. It's rewiring the brain. It's the magic part. It's the blankets. It's everything in your life that you don't see. And it just works. It comes from flows, leads to the deep understanding, and leads to secondary flows such as creativity, curiosity, and searching for the truth. And over time, it leads to the thing you desperately want most. It leads to clarity. I know that all of you want clarity. You want a life that you can understand. You want to understand yourself, others, even if they're completely irrational, and the world.
Okay, that's a lot, and it's new, but it's not complex. There's nothing complex in this. 12-year-old can understand this. Actually, the reason that is coming to you as being new and very much out of the box is only because you have accumulated in life way too much bullshit about things that are not actually driving forces and things that are not actually important. Most of these things were not wrong, they were just to the side of the truth. Okay, ready? Now we start with something funny, so you can get relaxed after all of this. We start with a small collection of advice about something practical. So you see how everything we just saw applies to a very practical situation. And the practical situation is you're the admin of a Facebook group. Who here does marketing or community building in some form? Okay, few people. If you manage a Facebook group, what should you know? You should know that everything in the world is somehow languages, structures, and quantities. And what can happen with language? With language, what can happen is mistranslation. This is a Japanese person trying to ask a question about JavaScript, and they're translating with Google Translate some years ago from Japanese to English. This is a question about JavaScript. And here, I cannot understand anything. The only thing I suspect is that when it says vomit, it is putting out an error. So it's putting out an error, somehow gets translated as vomit from Japanese. And there comes this insult to father stones. This is the actual question. Before it was just like a preamble to the question. And this is what happens when Japanese, a very metaphorical, flowy language, tries to get converted into structure, because in English is a much more structured language. This is what happens. And this is the end. Please apologize for your stupidity. As you know, famed Japanese courtesy. This is the actual translation. This was posted online in a forum many years ago, and it became, as you can see, legendary. This is what happens when languages mismatch. The problem with your index and with managing a Facebook group is that there's a big mismatch of languages. There are 3 languages about a Facebook group. The language of help, basically people helping each other, you know this. There's the language of fun. If you also kind of make it funny, people will love to go to this Facebook group and write and help each other, but also make jokes and having fun. Especially people love having fun at places that are supposed to be serious. And we have language number 3, the language of spam. Facebook groups will get bombarded, attacked by self-promoting dicks, as I call them, SPDs. I have been in this row many times, so I know how an SPD functions. And here I will tell you how these languages clash. There are 3 types of SPDs. There are the burners, the one who have a throwaway account, will come, want to make a spam post, and then they know that their account is toast, so they don't care. There are the consistent ones, who make slow, measured, repeating spam posts. And they are your friends. Your friends are the worst because they are harder to ban. How do you fight the SPDs? Don't let them in, ban them early, and strict rules for your friends. Rules are useless for anyone else because you prefer to ban people, not cite rule books to them. But for your friends, they are needed because you don't want to ban your friends without citing a reason. Rules are useless in this situation because whenever someone breaks a rule, the damage is done. The spam post is already there, people turn off their notifications, and your Facebook group is, after a few such occasions, dead. So, what can you do? Ban SPDs as early as possible, without reason, based on feel. My favorite line in all the history of law for all time was when, I think in the 70s, in the US, there was a very famous court case. There was a movie that was very erotic, and some wanted to classify it as porn, so it gets forbidden from the mainstream cinemas. And there were court cases, and then appeals, and it got to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court had a movie and had to decide if this movie is porn. And you know, Supreme Court justices, there are 9 justices there for life with the super fancy clothes and everything, extremely respected, and they usually write big-ass opinions, 30 to 50 pages about each court case. Justices write extremely multi-angle opinions about each case because there's the Supreme Court, no appeals, and American law is based on precedent, so whatever they decide, it holds for a long time. So there are these big opinions, big reasonings, but in this case, the judge who presented the final decision just said, it's not porn because I know it when I see it. That was the actual thing that he wrote. And this is exactly how you deal with this situation. Don't try to find reasoning to ban people. You can ban people with no reason, just because you know the spammer, you know the SPD when you see them. Whenever you think the right amount of banned people is, I can tell you, it's more. I have a Facebook group of about 3,000 people. I think there are about 250 banned ones. most of them never got the chance to post. And that's the idea. Wherever you think it's the right time to ban them, it's earlier. If you wait for the proof, the damage is done. So you ban them right away. Also, when they apply for the group, you can decline and ban them. This, I think, helps for them not creating new accounts, referring other SPD friends, and so on. If you think you need reasoning, to ban people, you don't. If someone wants an explanation, you can just block them if they're not your friend. That's why the friends are a problem. You can just block them. If you think your Facebook group is a democracy, you're already in the losing framework. It's a dictatorship. You are the dictator. And this is how it works. If you try to treat it like a democracy, it will get overrun by SPDs and die. So, this is a place where discrimination is a good idea. Because otherwise, how do you use pattern recognition to ban people? And if this didn't already win the political correctness prize, how to discriminate? Using everything, including race. Because in my field, SEO, almost all of the SPDs come from India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. These three countries, they should start with almost everyone who tries to enter, just ban them proactively. Otherwise, you just get your group overrun with spam and it's dead. So you lose everything. In the name of the ones who would not spam, you have to be very proactive with the ones that do. Of course, if you have doubts, you can always allow someone and turn on post approval, but this is still not the right approach for most people. And a reminder, you're not Nelson Mandela, you're a dictator. Participating in your Facebook group is not a human right. Not in any case. You don't owe shit anyone, and you just need to keep it clean. That's the approach needed for most communities, not only Facebook groups. So, why did we give this example? This example, we give it so that you can see that every rule, like don't discriminate people, obvious rule, has its exceptions. You cannot base your life on rules. If you base it on rules, you'll always get into a situation where it's extremely important or profitable to break a rule, and you would not want to break it. What is the corresponding flow of discrimination? It's respect. So, should you always respect people? Yes, definitely. But you can respect someone and ban them. These are not mutually exclusive. As participation in the Facebook group is not a key human right, you can ban people who would spam it. So here in this example, you see the difference between the rigid, box-based, rule-based thinking and the flow thinking. In the flow thinking, you are allowed to do anything that does not decrease your core flows. And here we see the traps, the trap of purity that we talked in part 1. Here you see how it manifests. If you want to be pure and never have the like gray head feeling of having discriminated someone, you will not be able to solve this problem correctly. So purity definitely erases the freedom to do the right things in life. And we'll see many more examples here in part 2. Leaps of faith sometimes are extremely ugly. So for you, getting rid of your barriers and making a leap of faith to a flow-based life may look like this. Overcoming your barriers so you can ban an Indian spammer. That's how it looks sometimes. You want to have your barriers broken in some beautiful way, and sometimes it happens with love, with meaning, but sometimes you just need to break this ceiling that holds you. And there are times in life that look like this, And you should know that sometimes it happens like this and it's not a problem. Also, sometimes breaking the barriers will involve someone not being pleased. That's okay. That's okay. And in these cases, remember that you breaking the barrier means that you're really bumping up your superhero powers. You'll be able to be a different person in the future, help hundreds, thousands, maybe millions of people with the thing that you unlocked. So someone getting pissed off and whining is just an absolutely okay price that you can pay. Where do boxes and flows touch? So we learned how they are different, but where do they touch? Stories. Stories are just a bunch of boxes turned into a flow. And as our identity is largely based on stories, it's very important to know what stories these are. And these stories can be more fluid and more open than closed and boxing us in. Our identity, usually a bunch of stories, is either rigid or agile. And if the stories are more flowy, it's agile. If they're more rigid, then you have a hard time changing and improving. What does a good identity look like? It looks like this. I can do anything. I can do anything possible, including bad stuff. So if you think that your identity prevents you from doing bad stuff, this can change. And bad stuff, as you can see, is needed for intuition. Otherwise, you don't get full data point coverage of the whole world. And remember, identity always wins. So if you try to fight your identity head on, you will lose. No willpower, no routine, no habit, nothing can beat your identity. It always wins. That's how identity is defined. This part of you that always wins the internal clashes. But you can open space for new parts of the identity, and the rigid parts you can weaken and make them feel fake for your brain, which we'll see how it happens. This is the most important slide of part 2. Life, which we usually describe as language, is not language. Life is mathematics, just like all of nature. So what are the graphs, the equations, the spectrums in this? There are a lot, but you should care about only some of them. Which ones should you care? Not the ones that keep you in homeostasis, that keep you healthy, that keep your body and cells functioning, that keep your brain from not going crazy. Those are fine, with or without you. This is biology on your side. What you should really care about is these cases where biology has some imbalance in the structure and you have a spectrum that you're never in the middle. You're always attracted to one of the two ends, and one end is good in modern society and the other end is bad in modern society. Why? Because in the Stone Age, when we evolved, it was often reversed. So biology pulls you to something that was good in the Stone Age, but bad in modern age. And here biology is against you. The problem with biology is that it's very powerful, but the good thing is that biology has a very weak point. It's extremely predictable. So biology, 100 out of 100 cases, it will push you in the same direction. Psychology, intelligence, these are more unpredictable things, but biology is extremely predictable. And I Grow Younger is all about making constructions so that the predictability of biology is turned against something else in biology that you want to get rid of because it was needed in the Stone Age, but it's no longer needed. So, what are the spectrums that we work with? First, we have sheep mode versus hunter mode. What is sheep mode? Sheep mode is when you're closed in, fear, possibly guilt, shame, anxiety, depression, all about closing in. Sheep mode is kind of the family of depressive and paralyzed states that a human can have. What does this mean? It means that your body and mind think that you're in a dangerous environment, that you should close in, be defensive, not make too much movements, not make any changes. No, for God's sake, never make any changes. And sheep mode is characterized by not doing much. But it's characterized by thinking a lot. So that's the problem in sheep mode. A lot of thinking, overthinking, rumination, intrusive thoughts, no action. So the worst place to be in mental health, apart from serious diagnosis, is this sheep mode thing. It's a downward spiral. And as Tony Robbins said, if you're in your head, you're dead. Basically, that sums it up pretty good. Sheep mode and hunter mode, where do they come from? How do we reverse? This is something we feel in the body. It's in the hormone levels. In sheep mode, we have a lot of cortisol. Everything is about closing us in, and everything screams to every cell in our body, danger, danger. You should endure. Not a moment for progress, not a moment for change, a moment for survival at a bearable cost. Basically, this is sheep mode. What is hunter mode? Well, whenever the body feels that it's safe, hormonal levels are different, and you have the things that are associated with chasing something, like dopamine, then you get into hunter mode, which means going after something, opening up to the world, connecting with other people, with the world. Something is happening in hunter mode. It's a place of action. And this is the place where you are happening to the world, not the world is happening to you. And it's very easy to know where you're in sheep mode, where you're in hunter mode, basically two totally different states, two totally different feelings. It's a mind and body loop. So if your mind is in a hunter mode and actively looks for options and looks for action, then it says to all of the glands to pump up the hormones in your body, so your body supports this. And this can also include a healthy dose of adrenaline used for focus and action, not the big dose which happens when you're stressed, but like smaller dose. And in hunter mode, you have much lower levels of cortisol. It's very important, I cannot stress this enough, in the ancient Stone Age times that we evolved, danger was not how danger is interpreted today. And safety was not how safety is interpreted today. So in today's time, safety is usually associated with stillness, sitting on the couch, not having to deal with anything right now. But in the ancient times when we evolved, safety was movement. Whenever you were safe, you were searching for food, you were building shelter, you were doing something. Because life was so hard that people needed to do something to improve it all the time, mostly search for food. So when did they do this? When it was safe, not when the saber-toothed tiger was around. Definitely, this was the moment when you were unsafe and you were still in the cave or at another hiding place. So safety and stillness and not doing anything is not the same thing biologically. Biologically, safety is movement and some action. If you don't do anything, well, guess what? Biology thinks that's unsafe. Cortisol starts increasing, and you can start the downward spiral to sheep mode. How do you break the sheep mode to get back into hunter mode? Well, you move and you do hunter mode actions. My favorite example, you feel down, you are in sheep mode, but you arrive at the bus stop, and when you are 30 meters from the bus stop, you see the bus just stopping at the bus stop. What is the hunter mode action? Chase the bus. What significance does it have to your life? Nothing. You can wait for the next bus. Nothing will change in your life objectively, but the signal you give yourself with chasing the bus says action, hunter mode, and you reverse this hormonal thing. And when you get in the bus, 10 seconds later, you are a different person. And if this can happen with the bus, it can happen with anything. The important thing is to know how these spectrums work and construct the environment and the structure around you so you get these hunter mode actions, not for the actions themselves, but for the signal that this gives inside, for the signal that you are safe and you are in charge. The next one is box mode and flow mode. This is entirely in the brain. It's about which hemisphere of the brain is dominant. Just like sheep and hunter mode, this is an unstable spectrum. Whichever side of the brain gets the wheel, they drive. The other part helps. It's not dormant, but they do not set the direction. So whenever you're left brain dominated, you're in some process, you try to manipulate the world, and the right brain helps. It provides context for the process, but you will never be driven by the big picture in left brain mode, because the left brain does not understand the big picture. The right part of the brain understands the world, the left part manipulates the world. So whenever you get stuck into the box mode, what happens? Well, you lose access to the blankets, the flows, and you go into a downward spiral, because when you're in box mode, what can often happen? You can go into sheep mode. But if you're active, if you're one of these people that wakes 5 a.m. each morning, everything is by the hour, you do all of these healthy things, you exercise, you work 15 hours a day, are you in sheep mode? Well, no, you obviously have targets and you chase them. But what is wrong then? What is wrong is that the third spectrum gets extremely messed. The third one is extrinsic versus intrinsic motivation. So people, when they hear extrinsic and intrinsic, they somehow feel that if it comes from me, it's intrinsic motivation. That's wrong. And extrinsic motivation does not only come from other people, so peer pressure and other unhealthy stuff, but it can also come from within. Because anything that you do to seek pleasure or avoid pain, which includes all coping mechanisms, naturally, because they are just a mechanism to avoid pain on some level, everything is extrinsic motivation. Then you'll be like, then what is intrinsic motivation? Intrinsic motivation is when you do things without knowing why. So if you had moments in your life where you did stuff without knowing why, but it was somehow a wonderful journey in another direction, this is intrinsic motivation. How are they distinct? Well, they come from two totally different areas of the brain. Extrinsic motivation comes from one area of the brain, and intrinsic motivation comes mostly from the default mode network and some other related areas, which are occupied with what our place in the world is. So intrinsic motivation is exploring and finding your place in the world. And since this is since this is impossible to define, that's why you don't know why you do it. The problem is that these two also suppress each other, because extrinsic motivation is very tied to the box mode state and intrinsic to the flow mode state. And why do they suppress each other? Well, there's a physiological reason that both types of motivation require dopamine. So if extrinsic motivation gets the dopamine spikes, then there's not much dopamine left for intrinsic motivation. And dopamine is, as you know, it's debunked that it's the reward chemical. It's more like a motivation chemical, but think of it as motivation for the brain itself. It's like the spotlight that says, okay, this part of the brain is now leading the show. So it's the internal focus system of the brain. This is actually what neuromodulator means. It means this is the spotlight in this part of the brain where there's the dopamine, the neurons fire more strongly. That's what it means. So whenever the dopamine says this part of the brain, the extrinsic part, is leading the show, you're chasing goals, you're measuring success, all of the extrinsic motivation stuff. Intrinsic motivations get further and further away. And without intrinsic motivation, you can chase goals that are not yours. You copied them from society, you try to prove yourself to your parents, to a woman, to yourself. Even proving yourself to yourself is still extrinsic motivation. It's only intrinsic if you don't know why you do it. So, for example, if a painter paints a beautiful painting, they just do it. You know, they don't do it to impress someone, they just do it. So this is what intrinsic motivation looks like. Intrinsic motivation is very important for your true alignment with what you want in the world. Because extrinsic motivation, you know, the world is full of goals, full of things we can chase, full of dopamine. It can be a never-ending hamster wheel. Imagine if you're into some professional sports, all you do is win, new match, new tournament, a lot of extrinsic motivation. But look at the best sports people. They are the ones who love the sport. You can look at Djokovic, Nadal, Federer. All love to play tennis. They may be super grinders who try to get there, but it's not the same if you don't love tennis. The people who love tennis, they'll always be better because intrinsic motivation will lead you to places where extrinsic motivation can never lead you. For example, if you get injured and you cannot play tennis for a while, if you only have extrinsic motivation, you will not be able to get past this. But if you also have intrinsic motivation, then you have a bigger family of driving forces behind you. The combinations of those lead to downward and upward spirals. If you're in the red stuff brings more red stuff and it's a downward spiral. If you're in the green stuff brings more green stuff and it's an upward spiral. The exception if you manage to combine hunter mode, if you have a lot of hunter mode, but you have box mode and extrinsic motivation, hunter mode will only increase your extrinsic motivation. And this way you get stuck into this local maximum that all of these grinding, optimizing people get into. So everyone who lives their life like an optimizer, they're in this trap, which is very popular among successful people. A lot of successful people are optimizers and they're successful not because of this. They're successful in spite of this because it's very hard in the modern world to prioritize intrinsic motivation. Why? Well, the world is very result-driven. Intrinsic motivation is low, and it means that you can quit stuff when it's 90% done. It means that you can start something when on paper there are much better options. And it just means doing things without knowing why, following your intuition. And all of these spectrums have this graph, up and down. And they influence each other's graph. So life is basically just graphs, maths, and quantities that we cannot measure. Those super important things we cannot properly measure. They change at any moment. What we can do, the instinct in any moment to care about the graph, not care about much else. If you want the flows, if you want the blankets, if you want these strong charts up, what you need is the graph to go a bit up in this moment. That's all you need. But this is real going up, not like Atomic Habits can tell you, okay, improve your routines and if you improve your life 1% each day, then you'll have 30x at the end of the year. It's not wrong. It's not the actual driving force. What will actually make you change your routines is one of those spectrums. Without these driving forces, nothing will happen in your life. And this growth is real, possible, it just cannot be measured. And here we get from the second snapshot where just the graph goes up and down to something more interesting. We go to a day. So the second can change the day and the day can change the life. And here we have another very interesting story. from 2,000 years ago, but I have never found a better story to illustrate this. So 2,000 years ago, there was a big civil war in Rome, and Caesar and Pompey were the two warring leaders. Caesar was not in a great spot in this war. Pompey had a lot of money, a lot of influence in politics, and a lot of armies. But Caesar had the advantage that he had already conquered Rome, because Pompey's armies were half in Spain, half in Greece and Macedonia. So Caesar went to Spain, managed to defeat with some maneuvering some of Pompey's armies, but Pompey had raised double the soldiers in Greece and was super powerful. So Caesar went in somewhere around Greece to find Pompey, and there was a first battle. This battle was very weird, like a lot of Roman battles, because Romans were carrying wooden plates with them, with the army, so they could bring forts and fences without having to chop down trees, so very fast. And every time a Roman army, a Roman legion stopped to camp, they would build these forts around so they don't get like attacked in the night by surprise, which was very smart. But very often there was like forts, but there was also like a fence, and they had a lot of wood, so they would get creative and do like this almost labyrinths sometimes to protect important position, hills in ancient warfare, getting on the hill, the high ground, like in Star Wars, it was very important. So you had this fort, but also some walls and some like a small labyrinth-like structure. And Caesar decided that it was a very good idea to attack a small like fort behind the fence, because it was a hill and it was supposed to be a high ground. And he gave an order for a sizable amount of the army, I think something between 5,000 and 7,000 soldiers, to attack this and conquer it. But it was the night, so half of Caesar's army started following some wooden wall that was not the right one, and got astray in a totally different direction, and didn't participate in this battle at all, because they were following the wrong fence at night. It happens. So Caesar attacked with half his force, but also he had a deserter from his camp go to Pompey and tell all about his plans. So Pompey was prepared, and Caesar attacked with half the force. So even the best ones have bad days. So the attack was a disaster, hundreds of casualties, important officers killed, and it was a rout. Caesar's army was running back to the camp, and morale was so low that one of the running soldiers, not sure, history doesn't tell if on purpose or by accident, tried to kill Caesar with his spear. Caesar was saved by a bodyguard, but this is how bad things went. So morale was super low at this point. And Pompey had every advantage in this moment to just go all in and start an all-in night battle while Caesar's army morale was low, and it would have been a victory. Even Caesar, who didn't like to admit that he was in a losing position ever, wrote in his diary, "The opponent would have won today if they were commanded by a winner." That's what he wrote. And Pompey did nothing. He was just, okay, minor victory, still good enough. The opponent suffered a lot. We stay here and party. And after a few weeks, there was another battle, which was very evenly matched, but Caesar won. And this was the end of Pompey, the literal end, because Pompey went to Egypt to seek help from the Egyptian pharaoh, who was like a vassal of Rome at this time, and the pharaoh of Egypt had already learned that Caesar won the battle, so he knew who the strong man in Rome was, and he wanted to act like being with the strong man. So he sent men who were waiting for Pompey at the harbor, and Pompey was killed on the spot. So it was only like 2 months after this decision of not to press the advantage, Pompey died, and he was one decision away from being the most powerful man in Rome, and you can arguably say the world. 2 months after that, he was dead, killed by some random soldiers in the harbor. So that's a very important story, because it says how fatal in life is not to press the advantage. So if you have advantage, you press it. That's it. Otherwise, your advantage very quickly turns into a disadvantage. It's just how life works. Momentum is the most precious thing. You remember the graphs going up and down? Momentum is the real deal. If you have momentum, you can push the graphs up, and you should not be afraid that this whole thing is destabilizing. Your mind and body, your barriers, your limiting beliefs may try to hold you back and say, okay, but it's good, we achieved some victory, we are safe. Why press home the advantage? Well, you press it. If you don't press it, you go down eventually. There's no such thing as a plateau. Every plateau is just a downward spiral in disguise. So why should you not be afraid to just be all in and push the advantages? Because of the structure of the day. You try to press home all of the advantage in the day. If it fails, if the win turns into a defeat in the end, you tried. But most important, then you sleep. Sleep resets the positive and the negative. But it's, of course, built to reset the negative a bit more. So sleep is your natural floor in life. Okay, bad day, you sleep, then another day begins. So you have a floor in life, but you have no ceiling for this day. This is why you should be all in your days. The days that go well, these are the times to really push it. And the advice that you often hear, celebrate small wins, that you often hear in self-help, is the dumbest advice I have ever heard. This advice can be given only by people who don't know what the driving forces of a human are. Never celebrate small wins. You can be joyful about them, but like celebrating them turns into a box and kills the whole effect. So that's a big slide. But to summarize, you just need to push up and accumulate those superpowers, those graphs. From a rational perspective, your life is extremely long. Each day has a lot of seconds, like 50,000 waking seconds, and your life has about 20,000 days. So life is extremely long in seconds. This is why every second, the important thing, what is? The graph to go up. If it's going down, try to go less down. Do the right things. There's not so much to optimize. Hunter mode versus sheep mode, boxes versus flow, intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. If you get two of these right, the third one will align automatically from biology. But if you have this wrong, biology is against you and will bring you down in downward spirals. If life is a sequence of seconds, how does change look? Well, change looks like this. Whenever you feel the change, this is not the second it started. It started in some invisible second before, some second that you did not give any priority to. So, what does this mean? Every second in your life is more or less equally important. Because the seconds that you deem not important, there something extremely important will happen. Then you will feel it minutes, hours, days later, and you will say, aha, amazing moment, realization, growth. We're crushing barriers, crushing limiting beliefs. We're opening up, replacing fear with love, replacing structure with chaos, all of the growth up. But this is not the second it began. The second it began was some silent shift of these curves somewhere in your biology. Somewhere the brain said, okay, we're safe, let's do it. And it may be in a moment when you didn't feel safe at all cognitively. But the brain, your biology decided, we're safe because this and that. Biological stuff, subconscious stuff. So how do we optimize for these invisible gains in these seconds? Well, the thing is that people focus on the wrong thing. People focus on emotions. Because what do you feel in a second? Mostly some emotion. Emotions come and go very quickly. If you don't like indulge into an emotion, it usually disappears after 90 seconds for most emotions. So emotions are very short term, but emotions are just a carrier of the brain's forces and activity. They are not the actual driving forces. There's a driving force, it creates emotions, and the emotions create behavior. So focusing on emotions, it's not bad. It's good to understand your emotions because it helps you read them as signals. It's signals for your intuition, like everything else. But emotions are not what makes you who you are. What makes you who you are was somehow defined in the biology and in your brain's role as a prediction mechanism, like a computer basically. And if you accept on every level, including the index level, the identity level, the deepest possible levels, that your life is just a bunch of seconds, a flow of seconds, then you live in reality, because this is what actually life is. People are very much focused on the now, but the second now, after 30 seconds, the second after 30 seconds will be the now after 30 seconds. So the now seems very important, but it's just 1 second, which means that if something happens that brings you down, you can be mindful, you can try not to react in a bad way, not to be reactive. Between stimulus and response, there's a space, yes, but also feel it like a flow. And if you see your life as a bunch of super valuable seconds, you won't want to waste your time on TikTok, because one of the reasons why your brain is okay with TikTok is that you say, it's like 15 seconds a video. It's not a lot of time, it's not a waste. Well, make it a waste. Like if your brain feels it as a waste, you would not want to be on TikTok as much. And change needs hope. If you don't believe something can happen, it will happen much harder. It can still happen. Change can happen without hope, just harder. Faith is a multiplier. So if you're already like positive in a positive direction, having faith is good, especially if it's something that's more in your hands and less out of your hands. But you can often do without faith, because faith can generate expectations, and these are boxes, so you're going into the negative territory. But hope is very good. And change, you have so much seconds to try. It's like hitchhiking, like hundreds of cars pass, you only need one. It's the same with change. Real change, change that is not like push willpower change, the type that doesn't work. Real change coming from the flows and hunter mode and intrinsic motivation, real change stays. So you only need to succeed once. And if you don't believe that change is possible, well, first remember that objectively it always is. Very few things have a 0 chance of happening. But also the fact that you have never experienced the positive outcome of the change does not mean that it's not there somewhere in your future. The fact that you cannot imagine it does not mean that it will not happen. These things are totally disconnected. Every big change in our life happens in a way that we didn't think it would happen, because the options are so many that our idea of how it would happen almost never matches reality. And that's perfectly fine. And how do you open yourself to change? Well, for a start, get rid of the phone and all of the dopamine-focused social media, TikTok. This suppresses emotions. So it basically suppresses the driving forces that can bring you change, because emotions can bring good change if they are good emotions. Even if they are negative emotions like sadness, sadness is healthy. It's the natural coping flow. So if you're sad, just let the sadness be. You can even amplify it. You can listen to sad music. You can listen to rock ballads. This will help process something, and it would generate the flows that you need to make some change. If you're on social media, on TikTok, or anything that produces dopamine, this suppresses emotions and is of no use in any regard. you can look at life timeline-wise in two ways. As football or as tennis. In football, you have these very important moments. Someone is alone against the goalkeeper, they will either score or not, it's 50-50, like everyone's on the edge of their seat. But this happens like 5 times a football match, and the football match is an hour and a half. So a lot of the football match is waiting and watching people pass the ball around in the center. A lot of people, like me, as I was a professional chess player, a lot of people look at life as football. Why? Well, if you did some sports or very active like academic career, you start to be conditioned that there are many important moments in life and the rest is preparation and waiting. So, okay, the test in school is important, the exam is important, then you pitch your startup, that's important. Then you go to a very important client to pitch, that's important. You go to a competition, you go to a date with someone that you really like. Like, we have this feel that there are moments that are much more important than other moments, and that these moments are a minority in time. So let's say, on average, we have one such moment a week, or 2 or 3, and the rest is waiting and preparation. This model is a disaster. This is the opposite of what we just described with the seconds. If you think of life as tennis, where there are a lot of points, some are a bit more important than others, like break points, but mostly if you win 60% of the points in a tennis match, you almost always win the match. So tennis is much more like life. A lot of small points, just like a lot of seconds, and you don't have this lie that some moments are more important than others. And why are not some moments more important than others? Well, the reason is that when you go to pitch to the clients for a job interview or for a date, the fate of this performance is mostly already decided. The biology in you has prepared you for win or loss, and it's very hard to change the direction in this moment, especially if it's a short one. If it's a long one, if it's something that's hours long, it can change. But if it's a 5-minute pitch, like, your fate is already decided. You just don't know in which direction. Your biology is in some state and will produce a good or a bad performance. You don't know what a good or bad performance even is, because this is subjective, dependent on the people on the other side, but you also don't know what you produce. You get into some state, your biological machine produces something, and that's that. So, if you think that that's the important moment, actually some moments in the last days or hours, mostly hours, are the actual important moment. The things that will tell your brain what state to be in. So performance is not about the moment. And preparation, as the way we usually understand the world, is not so much about learning and preparing for this meeting, for this competition. It's much more about getting yourself in the right state. I can tell you, I was a top 5,000 chess player in the world. Only when I optimized being in the right state when I play a game. And mind you, chess is a very slow and very intellectual thing, so it's not like something that you would say that your state of body will be super important, but it is. I got from top 5,000 in the world to top 1,000 in the world with only optimizing state. And I try to do this before each game. Mostly worked, but sometimes it didn't. And when it didn't, I lost. But the times that it worked so much improved my results that I managed to improve my results considerably. Now we talk a bit about the environment. A lot of times we talked about safe and unsafe environment, but that's not the only spectrum of the environment. There's environment that will make you do things, and there's environment that will make you not do things. Many times I have heard that the environment is so important when you're an entrepreneur. I heard like, okay, you need to have active, motivated people who are supportive and so on. But this was many years after I started my entrepreneurial journey, which I didn't know was going to be successful. So when I started, it was just something I do day per day with no expected results. So I didn't know that I would 15 years later look back and say, this was the start of an 8-figure company. So when I look back, what do I find? I had just changed professions, no job, no friends, no support. Family was pissed off because I had just quit the university where both of my parents were teachers at. Never do that if you want to keep good relations in your family. And I also did not know anyone, not a single person in the profession that I was starting, SEO. Like zero professional contacts. No one to ask for advice. I was just reading stuff online from people I didn't personally know. It took me like 4 months, I think, of reading to be brave enough to ask a question online in a forum. It was a pre-social media time, so to ask a question in a forum, it took me 4 months of reading so I could ask adequate questions and not waste people's time. Zero support of any kind. But when I look back, this was the moment when I had the steepest curve of learning and progressing in my life. Every day was a new discovery, every day was a new skill. I was learning to make websites on WordPress, and 2 weeks later I was teaching it to earn some money. Literally 2 weeks later. It was crazy period, crazy. The people loved it. I earned some money, and then I would create other websites, and then I would do clients, and 1 week my websites would vanish from Google, and after 2 weeks I would learn why, and they would get back. It was so dynamic. And what was the only thing that I had in this period? And one more super funny thing. My computer with Windows 9.8, it was that long ago, had caught some of these super annoying worms that infect the system file. So like 10 times a day, my computer would give me a 1-minute warning and then restart. And this was not a laptop, but normal PC, when it restarts, like it restarts. There's no like sleep and stuff. 10 times a day, I would just get the warning, save everything, and then it would restart. It was extremely annoying. And in this environment, I achieved my steepest growth. What did I have? Just free time and space and nothing to do. It turns out that the environment that you need is just free space, action, and even if you have no one to brainstorm with, well, you make a lot of silly choices, but then it's not the big problem because you learn fast. The good thing about an environment is nothing holding you back. No responsibilities, free time, free space, space to improve and learn. And it worked for me. So how does a bad environment look like? Well, we all know that if I had friends and new people in the industry, it would have probably helped a bit, but it was not the main thing. But what's the thing that's holding people back? Well, it's having people around who are too slow. If you have people around who are slow, indecisive, that are very inertial, that think, and specifically people who plan and prepare, that's what's holding you back. If you want fast change, if you want fast growth, the worst thing you can do is get into long-term courses, school, university, where people go to learn and prepare. Because what you need is action right now in all possible directions, even if you don't know what you're doing. Action versus planning and preparing and waiting is the major differentiator of success versus fail. And so, doing the thing is the only way forward, basically, to do the thing. If you prepare to do the thing, what is the signal you give inside? Situation is hostile. There's danger. Otherwise, why prepare? We have evolved to prepare only if the environment is hostile and dangerous. Otherwise, we just do it. So, you're giving inside the wrong signal. It may be objectively good to prepare, but if you do it, you're giving a signal inside that will hold you back for this thing. Everything that's preparation is a trap, and a lot of the learning stuff, if it's not absolutely mandatory to know, is also a trap. If you can learn while doing, it's always the best choice. Well, of course, if you're a neurosurgeon or something, it's not an option, but in most jobs that we have today, it is an option. IT, sales, a lot of the creative stuff is just learning by doing. Our environment holds us back when we have avoidance alignment. Everything that is about preparing and not doing the stuff, I'm gonna just call it as it is, it's avoidance. It's not being mentally prepared to do the thing. And courses, seminars, universities, just vehicles of avoidance. This is the truth for everyone who is not in like a neurosurgeons or similar field where you can do real harm by trying. If you surround yourself with planners and not doers, you are digging your own professional grave. This is the real significance here. You want to be around doers. If you want people around you, you can do it alone, it's fine. If you want people around you, only doers. Otherwise, the stagnation that the planners will bring into your life, it's contagious and it will hold you back. Well, let's see how this all compiles into a signal system. The brain has a central equation. It's a prediction machine, and the equation looks like this. The brain constantly tries to predict the body, the environment, and itself. And if it manages to predict it correctly, it says, we're safe, move on. If it doesn't, it says, we're not safe, there's some danger here, otherwise we would be able to predict. The environment is unpredictable, so hostile, and we're not doing much here. We're preparing, we're not doing. And whenever the expectations of the brain get matched exactly as structure or exceeded if they're quantitative, the brain opens up and says, now is the time for development, action, and change. So if you remember the compass, when do we flip from these fear-based emotions at the bottom to the love-based emotions at the top? When does the flip happen? Before the flip, there's always a click. Something that the brain tried to predict and it went exactly as it was predicted or better. This is the only case where you can consciously flip this upwards. Of course, the flipping upwards may happen due to purely biological reasons. You fall in love, and your brain on love is a totally different chemistry. Amygdala gets quieted down, so no fear. You get braver, and you can go up. You now are love-driven, but you cannot control if you fall in love or not, and you cannot also control with whom. So this is not sustainable as a system. It helps, you can use it. It's not sustainable. What is sustainable? Understanding the world. If you understand the world and your understanding matches reality, you get these clicks where you are, aha, exactly as I thought it was going to happen. Usually not in your life, but regarding your connection to the world and the behavior of others, your behavior, many different things. If you match them, there's the click, and the click tells the brain you can go up, it's safe, and fear gets ditched, usually very quickly, because now is the window for love, so you don't know how long it's going to be open. So the brain will be very quick to get rid of the fear, the guilt, the shame, the barriers, the limiting beliefs, and get you up in the beautiful love part. Emotions are just constructions to get us to do something. So the prediction works. If it doesn't result in a good match, it generates fear-based emotions. If it does, it generates love-based emotions. So understanding, that's why it's the main focus at these talks. When you understand, and when this understanding now, it will not change you at all. But when it starts matching things that happen in your life, because now you have these things in the brain, when it starts matching things in your life, then you will see these clicks, and these clicks will make you more love-based, braver, more successful. And this leap up happens when the central equation of the brain, the prediction, decides that love is more appropriate than fear at the moment. And these are just constructions. The brain is a computer, so these are just constructions so it can go in the right direction. And when we receive the new information, this can happen very quickly. And here we can see why it is so beneficial getting lost in the forest. So if you want to have the dance of the doing and the understanding right, here is a classical example of a most beautiful construction. You get lost in the forest, you don't know where you are, which means that you have some adrenaline in your system just to be able to focus and do something, go somewhere, find back the path. This tells the brain this is important. So now you are in a higher stakes area, but not due to immediate danger, because in the forest it's safe, it's nature, it's a natural place to be for a human. So you get uncertainty without danger. You know what trauma is? Trauma is the opposite of the forest. Trauma is danger and certainty. Trauma is danger locked in time in our brain, and certainty means that it's certain that it's there. So the brain is certain that this moment is dangerous, so the trauma is there constantly. And of course it holds us back. The forest is not dangerous, but uncertain. So it's the total opposite of the trauma. If trauma means static brain, something you cannot process, you cannot get rid of. If it means the astrocytes encode a danger state for the brain, most or all of the time, the forest is exactly the opposite. It means total ability to change. The astrocytes give the neurons total permission to rewire. The neurons can rewire, and of course, we hope that it's in a good direction. Why? Because in the forest you have free space, you have flows, and you have no way to measure success. This is extremely hard to get rid of yourself in modernity of all the ways to measure success. Because if you measure success, you stress the astrocytes and you stop the rewiring. But in the forest, you have no way to measure success because you don't know where you are, and you don't know where you're going, and you don't know where you get there. So you're like fucking certain that you will not be able to measure success during the process. And that's the magic of it. You also are right brain dominated because there's no boxes in the forest. And you're also intrinsically motivated because, well, you want to find the path, but you don't know where and when. It's impossible to construct some scenario. And of course, if you're very prone to overthinking, you may keep overthinking in the forest. But the idea is that if you can just stop the overthinking, you're getting like a green triad of hunter mode, because obviously you're searching your way, and flow mode, because everything in the forest is a flow, and intrinsic motivation, especially if you don't like panic in the forest. And all of this is amplified by the adrenaline that this is important. And what happens when you find the path in like 2 hours? Well, you are in the forest for 2 hours, so you are thinking that you find the path in like 5, 10, 20 minutes, and one moment the path is in front of you. What does this mean? Prediction that suddenly in reality was much better than expected. So you find the path and you're, it's suddenly safe, immediately. Not after 5, 10, 15 minutes or whatever the brain predicted, immediately. We are back on the path and we're extremely safe. So the combination of all of these curves means that in this moment, your brain is biologically tricked into being totally susceptible to rewiring. So in the next 1, 2, 3 hours, there's a lot of physiological stuff. So when you find the path, one of the easiest way to ruin everything is to get into some vehicle, like a car or a lift, or a bus or another transportation, and go down the mountain. Whenever you go down a mountain with a vehicle, the change in air pressure really makes your brain dumb, and no rewiring will happen then. So this is an easy way to ruin it, for example. You should go down naturally, slowly down the mountain. If it's a mountain, if it's a flat forest, apparently doesn't matter. And try to be in nature more time. ChatGPT also suggested that you can take a nap, so you can like snap, fossilize the good change that just happened. There are a lot of ideas there, but the important thing is that till the first sleep, you are a different person with no resistance to change, or much less than before. So if you are like Pompey, you will do nothing. But if you wanna really take advantage, you would do all kinds of commitments. You hate your job, quit it. Like there will be no resistance to any good decision in this moment. If you have a task that you wanted to delegate for 3 years, it doesn't matter that it's 11 in the evening. Get out your email and write your coworker, I'm delegating this task to you now. Tomorrow, we'll have a call and the delegation will happen. So anything that's holding you back, all the barriers, all of the boxes, now is the moment to absolutely obliterate them in a way that it cannot be reversed. So you're tricking biology to be your ally for a very short time, completely alignment, and then you can use this for change. So now we see how the upward spiral works. Let's see how the downward spiral works. The downward spiral is a bit longer. It's what happens in the lives of most humans today. The human is taught that life is plentiful, that you can be anyone, that you have unlimited possibilities, that you can have like a lot of jobs, a lot of education, full access to information, now also to AI. And it tells you that you're supposed to grow, right? With all of these resources, your brain says, well, I should grow, I should develop, I should educate myself, I should develop skills, and I should be better human every day. The problem is that all of the cultural headwinds and the biological headwinds, all of the phones, the dopamine, and all of the planners around you that are not doers are holding you back. So in the end of the day, what happens? You don't grow. And this is the average day of most humans in modernity. They don't grow. Their tomorrow is more or less the same as their today. What signal does this give the brain as a prediction machine? Confusion. Like I was supposed to grow, but I didn't grow. Confusion. And it means that the environment is hostile. There is danger. I couldn't access the situation. I made a wrong prediction. So we're going a little bit down. But the next day starts the same. Oh, new day. I just slept. I'm kind of reset. And I feel like I should grow. And in the evening, no growth has happened. Even more digging down. And imagine if this happens like 2 years in a row. Like it has happened with so many people who cannot really get out of this sheep mode situation that they're in. It's just signals over signals over signals to the brain that everything is dangerous and they should close in. And this ends up in anxiety, depression, or if you have hunter mode, but you don't have the flows and the intrinsic motivation, the typical result is burnout. All of these burnout people, they have the hunter mode, so they have the drive, but they don't have the right direction. Burnout really means that you have wasted a lot of effort on something that's not deeply meaningful to you. Because if it's deeply meaningful, you will never burn out, you will feel great. And how do we break this fucking cycle? Peak amplitude, forests, love, like anything that happens in the life that has amplitude, and also things that you construct. This cycle is super weak. It's just very consistent. Because it's weak, you can break it one day, next day will be better. Then it will be easier to break the cycle in the next day because you'll be better, stronger, more flows, more intrinsic motivation, more hunter mode, and in like a week you can get rid of the cycle. And this is how actual change in people's lives happens. Something gives them amplitude and they break this stupid cycle. And this is why everyone who tells you that your life is supposed to be balanced can go eat shit. Because this is a total lie in modernity. You can go tell the Stone Age person that their life was supposed to be balanced, which was meaning having enough food and not being eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. It would be valid for him or her. But for you, you need the amplitude. Balance is just completely misunderstood. You need balance in parts of your life, but your life as a whole, in modernity, needs amplitude because culture is like misrepresenting balance and just dragging you down. And here are the flows that you can maximize. Self-love. Be one with yourself. What happens in terms of success and progress? You don't self-sabotage. Why? Because you are one whole and you don't want to self-sabotage. Unconditional love. How does this help you? Well, the chemical changes in the brain on love is that you become braver, you take risks. Meaning helps you connect and contribute. So basically gives you more and more driving forces. Responsibility tells you to act now instead of waiting and planning. Freedom, which allows all of the above, can give you something that's very misrepresented in modern age, which is loving money. There's nothing wrong with loving money. Money gives a lot of the freedom. So if you love freedom, love money. What's the problem? There's no problem. The bad thing is to love special amounts of money, like being obsessed that you need to have 1 million or 10 million or something. Now that's extremely stupid. And it will actually prevent you from getting there, or if you get there, you'll be unhappy. But loving money as a concept and as a path to freedom is perfectly fine and recommended. So if you love freedom, really, really love freedom, you can convert this into love for money. And if you have love for money, you'll be much better in business and in work, because most of us work for money. Like if you're a doctor, a hero, and so on, it's a totally different thing, but most of the other people, they work for money or money and something else. Scale maxes all of the above. And what will scale give you? Well, extrinsic motivation. And you'll be like, what? So I thought we wanted intrinsic motivation. That's true, but not 100% realistic. No one can live their life on 100% intrinsic motivation. There will be moments where you're down and out, physically, didn't sleep enough, had a bad meal, have overwhelming emotions after something happened. In these cases, the first thing that the brain will shut down is the intrinsic motivation circuits, as the brain will say, well, you're in a rough spot, fuck intrinsic motivation, you have to survive, so like we're going the most structured way here in terms of improving your safety and chances of survival. So you will have demotivated moments where you have no intrinsic motivations. If you only have intrinsic motivations, these are the moments where your project will fail and everything will go to hell. Extrinsic motivation can come from a lot of unhealthy places, and the least unhealthy place it can come is measuring your growth, feeling your growth. So it's less unhealthy because it's more intuitive, like I want to feel like I grow. Well, this is not a core flow. It's not as healthy as, let's say, love or meaning. It's still something. Something that in the tough moments, it will not let you abandon anything. In my company, there have been a lot of moments where I had no intrinsic motivation. And if I didn't have the extrinsic motivation of seeing our revenue and other metrics grow, I would have probably quit. So extrinsic motivation has its place in the right, of the right type whenever you have no intrinsic motivation. So where do we start from? Whatever you have in your life. Some will have love, others will have forest. Someone else would love to swim or go out with a boat in the sea. All the flow experiences you can use. And the intuition of all of these things has two ways to die. Danger number one, too many fears and boxes already. A lot of people are there. I call this the wall. It means you're shut inside, everything is reflected back to you. It's like a wall of mirrors. That's bad. Why? You have lost connection to the world, to joy, and everything becomes about you in the boxy way. This means status replaces flows, performance replaces joy, and you lose connection with the flows. This is a very depressive thing, and of course, if you feel like you have the wall, you should seek therapy, even if you have it for parts of your life. But I'll give you a second option that therapy is great, but I'll give you a second option which you can use to complement therapy. So the wall needs to be broken, of course. How do you break it? Amplitude. So forest, love, all of those. But if the wall is so strong and tough that it doesn't allow you to go into the forest, then what do? You need to do something about that something. And you need to throw stones at the wall, basically go all in on it. And the wall has this super dark side that it causes you to overthink everything. So if you have a lot of overthinking in your life, you have a wall. So maybe you don't have anxiety, maybe you don't have depression, but if you know how these things are diagnosed, okay, there are 7 features of depression, or 7 books, so 7 characteristics, and if you have 3 or 4 or more, you're diagnosed with depression. But you can have 2, but you can also have 3 from anxiety and 3 from OCD, and there are a lot of conditions that you may have different negative traits. And a lot of the bad conditions in mental health all have this in common. They go with overthinking. So if you have overthinking, you have some damage. And it may not be depression, it may not be anxiety, it may be some cross-diagnosis thing that is not so severe, but you have something to work on. And how do you get rid of overthinking? I think you need to get rid of overthinking by realizing that it is only part of you that's not a part of you. So depression, it's a part of you. You accept it, this improves you to change it. Anxiety, it's a part of you. If you don't accept it, you become anxious about being anxious and only making things worse. So depression, anxiety, you accept those stuff. The overthinking, though, is not part of you. The wall is part of you, it's the enemy, and overthinking is the weapons of the wall. You don't generate it, the wall does. Why? To weaken you. Overthinking just sucks away all of your energy and kills your amplitude. That's what overthinking is. Why? Because the walls evolved just like living creatures, and they evolved to be strong walls with weapons to weaken you so you cannot break the wall. So overthinking needs a totally different attitude. You need to be I just want to get mad at the overthinking and crush it with all possible weapons. I forget that it's part of me. It's not like depression, it's not like anxiety. I open the art of war and look at all the ways to crush the opponent with strength, force, strategy, and basically everything at your disposal. If you start overthinking, a lot of the coping mechanisms that would usually not be good become better than overthinking, which is downward spiral in no possible regard. So think about your ugly coping that has helped you. In some cases, not break apart. It's probably better than overthinking. And overthinking, you should be aware that it's the worst. And the war with overthinking is just fought on all fronts, all of the time. You should just know the stakes here. Overthinking is basically the worst downward spiral. The woe, you may have recognized, it's kind of your ego. I didn't put it like this because there are different types of ego, but the woe is your negative, like self-focused ego, your own worst enemy. And of course, the woe will crush your intuition because you have bigger problems, basically, and intuition will not be a priority or listening to it. So this is how intuition dies on a emotional, more like basis mental health level. But intuition can also die on an intellectual level. And how does this happen? When people don't differentiate between those things. Visible, invisible, supernatural. These are three distinct types of stuff in your life. Unfortunately, due to limitations of language and culture, we don't somehow see life in this way. People get stuck into the edges and sides of this triangle. This triangle is kind of obvious. You can care about three things in life: truth, spirituality, so flaws and their representations in your identity, and nothing. We sometimes forget that we may care about nothing. So, if you care only about truth, you lose the flaws. If you care only about spirituality, you lose connection to reality. And if you care about nothing, well, obviously not a good place to be. But the opposites of those are also bad. If you don't care about truth and you only have spirituality and you don't care about anything else, you are ignorant. If you care only about truth and nothing and don't have spirituality, you become mechanistic, mechanical. You lose the flows. And the hidden most trap here is if you care about truth and spirituality and not about nothing, you get into this hyper-moral category where everything is important and you become a prison of your own mind because everything is important and action is not allowed because you may break something important. So about 15 to 20% of people are hyper-moral. Absolutely hidden problem. They think that's the only way to live, and their friends love who they are because they always turn the bad things inside and the good things outside. So hypermorality, hidden problem. These people have tremendous potential that they would not fulfill. Where should you be? In the center. Only in the center of this triangle you can have strong intuition. Why? Because only in the center you divide properly the visible, the invisible, and the supernatural. Only in the center. Every side is a failure and every edge is a failure about this. So a lot of people are not like traumatized or have a wall or something, but they fail in the triangle intellectually. So this is a place where you can fail. So more is always possible. This is the conclusion that we get when we regard life as a collection of seconds. If life is a collection of seconds, if each second can be better, if the curve can go up, then more is always possible. And if more is always possible, there's no limit to your potential in most directions. Okay, thanks a lot. Help spread I Grow Younger by sharing. There will be a video of last part and this part together. It will be a very long video, but as you can see, very valuable. So help spread this out. It would help us a lot.